All right. To start, Jake, I would like you to do.
What is this?
Yep. I would like you to do the Gambit line when he arrives.
I'm about to be making a name for. No, I can't do it. It sounds racist.
I
can't do it.
That's close
No,
enough.
it sounds.
Have you seen Deadpool, Lucy?
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
I refuse
fair enough. All right. Have you seen pictures of Channing Tatum doing the rounds dressed as Gambit, saying something weird on like on the Twitter?
I know that he's in it. I don't know.
Okay,
Marketing
what
has
he
spoiled
says.
it heavily too.
Ryan
so
Reynolds
it's
is spoiling
nice.
stuff
Yeah,
now.
it's all.
He is actually. He's
just
fully
out
out there
there
at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can't really actually say it. I think it's illegal to speak in that
It
voice. Unless you are.
I love how like years ago he comes out with "My name's Jeff."
I thought of that the
crushes it.
entire time. Every time he spoke, it like ruined it for me.
Yeah.
My name is Jeff.
My name's Jeff. To that day, that line lives forever. Like that is an all-timer in cinema.
Yeah. Happy to finally. Thank you.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Are you guys feeling the absence of Mario and Sonic Olympic Games right now? As an Olympics fan, I feel like it's like not complete. Have you guys even noticed that there's not a game?
I noticed it, but it's not. You know, I didn't build my summer around it.
Wow, she just totally demolished you.
Dumpster.
Comprehensively.
Dumpster.
Just get fucking wrecked.
All right,
that is that here.
Sorry.
So one time I care about sports.
I am fueled by the memes for the Olympics.
The gun guy, the Turkish gun shooting guy.
The whole gallery of Mark's people shooting shit in their own unique way, and how it it looks like a cyberpunk poster when you put them all together. I'm into that. It's good. I also think it's extremely funny that they made them swim in the Seine.
Oh god!
then they all got sick, and they had to pull out of like future things because the Seine is poison. Like, what are you doing? Come on now.
I love the guy who's obsessed with the chocolate muffins.
I didn't see this.
There's a guy who just has a TikTok, and he's obsessed with the chocolate muffins you can get at the Olympic Village, and he just posts so many TikToks about those chocolate muffins that even I'm at the point where I'm like, I would go to Paris for that. if I'm in the area.
I'll just catch the train over from London. Feeling very bad for the poor pole vaulter. He really fell short in that event, even if he didn't fall short in other areas of life. Yep. Did you see this one, Jake? You have this look on your face.
Is it the guy who got knocked? Did he get hit in the nuts?
No, but he did. Well, yes, in a way. Basically, let's just say he couldn't clear the bar because of his endowment.
No way.
Good for
yeah.
Good for him.
It got in the way.
You know,
it got in the way.
It looked very painful. I felt so bad for him because, like, you know, my biggest thing. You know, my biggest fear. I don't want to become.
You know what his biggest thing is?
Yeah.
You know what? No, but I mean, like, there's worse ways to become a meme than that. Let's just put it that way, right?
I mean,
worse ways.
Yes. But at the same time, I don't know, hook to a girl, it has like a whole licensing thing now, so
that's very unsettling on many levels.
Yeah.
So.
No, we're a big fan, and by her, I mean Americans. Like we're all big fan.
I don't get it.
She's doing great,
but she's got like sources and stuff that she's. Yeah, she's like moved to LA. Yeah, hang on.
No, I thought she was keeping it.
She has moved to LA.
No, I thought she was keeping it home. She said she was going to live at home and just like take care of her dogs.
I did read somewhere she moved to LA, but it could have just been like fake news. It could have absolutely been just nonsense.
Well, she'll be in the next Olympics, so that's fine.
Yeah, she'll be carrying the torch. Yeah. In one of the legs, you know. So because it's in LA, isn't it? Isn't the next Olympics in LA?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Night
I also love how Snoop Dogg has become like the unofficial mascot of the Olympic Games, basically.
Oh no, they're paying him to be there.
Okay, so an official mascot.
He's there in an official capacity. He's
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He's supporting families. He's doing commentary.
Full equestrian gear.
Oh,
he looks so sick. He looks so sick dressed like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he was dancing with a horse. I don't know if you saw this. He was like just standing there fucking vibing out with this horse. It was so good. He's still got it all these years later, man.
Yeah, he really does. We love him. The best thing I saw from that was like, somebody like a meme. It was like, my mom called to tell me how much she's enjoying Snoop Dogg covering the Olympics. And I had to say, Mom, you grounded me for buying his CD 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah. And he replied or something, right?
Did he? Oh,
I think so. Better. I think he ended up replying.
All right.
Well, with that is your official post-Olympics France 2024 coverage here at Friends Per Second. This is a video game podcast where a bunch of friends here gather to talk about, you guessed it, video games. This is episode 51, and we have a lot. This is a stacked episode, guys, right? This is a big one. We've had a lot of episodes of time to ourselves to like really, gather and nurture our friendship. But now it's time to talk to some of the big guns. We have a lot of big conversations with Jason Schreier talking about Bungie layoffs and Destiny and everything going on with the industry right now. We also have an interview with the folks behind Plucky Squire, a game, Ralph, you have covered and one that I'm very excited for. Mm-hmm. And we're also speaking to some former members of Game Informer. If you saw the headlines, Game Informer is officially shut down. So we're looking forward to chatting with them. But before that, I just want to say thank you guys for being here. I love you both. Let's buckle up and let's just jump into our first bit of.
It's our job to be here, by the way. This is the agreement that we have. We all do this every 2 weeks.
I didn't sign anything.
It's nice to feel. It's nice to feel appreciated.
Yeah.
What, Ralph? Why did you make it sound like it's court ordered?
Yeah, well, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes.
I just think it would be nice for people to hear a podcast, especially this episode with a lot of gloom and doom. To hear that, like, I love you guys and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Why not?
I love you guys.
How often do you hear podcast hosts just say that?
If they're like married couples,
I feel like
yeah.
There's like married couple podcasts and also like comedy podcasts. They don't say it, but you can really tell that they're feeling.
Oh,
it,
the Basement
you know what I mean?
Yard guys.
Is that what I don't listen to them? But like a good comedy podcast, you can feel the love in that room. It works.
Oh wait, well, guys, because we're at the top of the show, we should probably announce that.
Oh yeah,
yes,
we have something to announce.
Yes,
we do. Okay.
Who wants to say it? I'll say it.
Jake, you do it.
Okay, you do it. Go for it.
So, Gamescom in Cologne, Germany. It's happening very, very soon. And we're doing Friends Per Second, but live. We're really excited about it. We're definitely nervous because we've never done something like this before. And we're doing it smack in the middle of Gamescom. It's going to be Thursday, August 22nd. It's going to be from 4 to 6 p.m. And the stage is located in Hall 11.2 as part of the public show floor. What is up with Gamescom? Why is there a hall 11.2? I'm so scared. I've never been to Gamescom. Am I gonna get lost?
You don't understand how big this place is.
Oh,
this
screwed,
place is
man.
this place is like, I imagine this is what NASA looks like. Just lots of giant hangars and like just never ends. That's what Gamescom.
Oh boy.
Like.
Yeah, that's why like most of the time you spend as much time as possible in the business center, and then the show floor itself is just rammed. I love Gamescom. I miss it I think this is my 8th or 9th or something ridiculous.
Wow.
But
this is baby's first, so I'm terrified. But I'm looking forward to it. And hopefully we see you guys there.
To the tiny beers and the pork knuckle.
Yep. But no, if you're in the area, please stop by. We've got a show planned. It's gonna be fun. As Jake said, we are nervous because it's our first time doing it live, but we think we'll do okay. And more than anything else, we're just like excited to do something like that because it's cool and we'll get to meet you guys and we'll do some Q&A from the audience stuff and stay a while and listen. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Originally we were very afraid because we thought we only had an hour, and could you imagine if we tried to do a podcast in 1 hour?
We get through the intro.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Friends Per Second cannot be contained within 1 hour, within 60 minutes, damn it. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys there. Wish us luck. And let's move on to our first segment. A conversation with Jason Schreier of Bloomberg.
hello and welcome, Jason Schreier. Good to see you again, man.
Sup?
How you doing?
Hello, I was about to take a sip, but then you threw it to me.
Gotcha.
Sooner than I thought. Can I just tell you guys before we get started? I gotta tell you all that. So I, as you guys know, I'm about to launch a book in a couple of months, and I've been like saying no to pretty much every podcast request except for my own Triple Click. But when you guys reached out, I was like, FPS, man, I love those guys, so I gotta say yes for this.
Appreciate
you
that.
guys are very special. You guys have an exception in my heart.
Thank you.
That's gonna go to our heads.
Appreciate it.
You should let it. You should let it get to your hands.
The book, by the way, we'll knock off the book stuff at the top. Tell us just briefly about the book you're working on.
Sure. So we'll talk more about this closer to then, so people can look forward to that. But yeah, it's called Play Nice: The Rise, Fall, and Future of Blizzard Entertainment. It comes out October 8th. It's a hell of a story. It's actually a story very similar to the Bungie one in many ways. There are a lot of parallels there that I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah, it's a hell of a story. It's the 33-year saga of Blizzard, starting from when it was 2 college students all the way up until today. Goes through pretty much every era, from like the creation of Warcraft and Diablo and Starcraft to Overwatch and Hearthstone. I mean, pretty much the development of every game they made is in here. And then all the way up to the battles between Activision and Blizzard, and then the Microsoft acquisition and the lawsuit, of course. And yeah, the whole story is in there. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to checking it out. And I mean, look, if anyone doesn't know Jason Schreier, I mean, everyone who's watching this podcast knows who Jason Schreier is, but in the off chance you don't, obviously, Jason is the biggest sort of scoop maker in the games industry business. Obviously, previously at Kotaku, now working at Bloomberg. How long have you been at Bloomberg now?
4 years.
Wow.
4 years. Okay. Wow, that's cool. And
yeah, everyone's like, oh my God, 4 years, but pandemic time is
Yeah.
just like a different world.
Fucks everything up. But yeah, consistently incredible reporting across the board for what's going on behind the scenes of the video games industry. We as commentators are always talking about what, firsthand reporting happens, like what you guys are able to uncover. And so, always really appreciate the work that you do and really interested to read it, particularly, this recent stuff with Bungie. Obviously, the background to this, if anyone is unaware, is that Bungie has laid off hundreds of people. That was both now as well as last year. They did 200 layoffs this week. They did 100 last year in October. They also moved out 375 developers. I can't remember the exact
I'll tell you the
number.
numbers. So the numbers are 220 laid off last week, 155 moved to Sony, and then another 40-ish are going to spin out a new studio under Sony. They're working on an incubation project at Bungie, and that's now going to move to be under the Sony umbrella instead.
Exactly, yeah. So obviously you provided some in-depth reporting on that recently over at Bloomberg, and we kind of just wanted to talk through that for anyone that hasn't seen that reporting yet, but also talk about, what it was like to have those conversations with those Bungie people adjacent, etc. So yeah, let's I guess kick it off. I think the overall story that emerged from this is one of Bungie's leadership overextending themselves and committing to the studio to far too many projects without necessarily enough risk built in, or to cushion the risk. What can you tell us about the sort of decisions Bungie made along the way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we need to provide some context here because it's important to know that this stuff doesn't just happen in a vacuum. So going back to pandemic times, 2020, 2021, there's a ton of growth like all at once in the video game industry. Pretty much every game is doing well. All of these online games especially are doing exceptionally well. Animal Crossing explodes. Fortnite is everywhere. Among Us and Call of Duty Warzone and Destiny, of course, is doing well as well. They're no exception. And at the same time, interest rates are super low, and a lot of the big game companies flush with cash, able to borrow money at incredibly low rates, and also just thinking that this pandemic growth will never end, they decide, hey, we're gonna make some acquisitions. Microsoft buys Activision Blizzard for $69 billion. Take-Two buys Zynga for $12 billion, maybe the worst acquisition in video game history, because that has just been a disaster for them. And then, of course, Sony buys Bungie for $3.6 billion. which is kind of a crazy amount for a game studio that operates a single game. And at that point, Bungie is, if I'm remembering correctly, between 800 and 900 people, like around that size. And then flush with Sony cash and looking to kind of find the next big thing after Destiny, Bungie goes out and they expand and they hire like crazy. They hire hundreds of new people in the next couple of years. And at the same time, they're doing all these incubation projects. A lot of these hires are for new stuff. They've been doing incubation projects even before that. And so they are kind of trying to juggle a bunch of different things at once. And that leads to some problems, especially when it turns out the pandemic growth is not actually sustainable. And when people can go back to leaving the house, they're not playing quite as many video games. And so then we hit this time of higher interest rates and flattened growth, and especially in the console space, a real lack of growth. And suddenly all of those hires are more of an albatross than like this cool new opportunity. And at the same time, Destiny 2 is not where it should be. Lightfall is a huge miss for them. They lose a lot of their player sentiment takes a hit. They lose a lot of money, or they're not making as much money as they thought they would. During one meeting last year, Pete Parsons, the CEO, told staff that they had missed their revenue targets by 45%, which is a crazy number. So now we're at this point where Bungie is losing money every day. They're getting a lot of pressure from their higher ups, and they've launched way too many incubation projects in an attempt to like find the next big thing. And so they go through these two different rounds of layoffs. And with this most recent one, they decide, okay, we're going to focus on Destiny and we're going to focus on Marathon. And hopefully Marathon is a big hit, and hopefully we can keep Destiny going, and we're going to slim down and we're going to get rid of a lot of those incubation projects and really just focus on what works. And of course, that means eliminating a lot of jobs, and that's where we're at now.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So I think one of the things that came through from I guess Stephen Tillo's reporting on this was the idea that Bungie sort of overpromised to Sony in that acquisition, that they sort of like overstated their earnings potential in the future. Did you, in your discussions with anyone, chance upon any of that sort of stuff?
That's not something that I can back up, but I certainly trust Steven. Steven's a great reporter, and his post on his story on GameFile is well worth checking out. That's not something that I've reported or would feel comfortable saying anything about right now.
Yeah, fair enough. I think obviously there's a lot of talk about Pete Parsons' role within all of this as sort of, CEO of the company. What, in your discussions, how were people talking about his role in these decisions, and how are they feeling towards him at this point, especially given all that stuff that came out about his car collection?
Yeah, I want to get to the car collection. I'll get to that in a second.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was generally a pretty well-liked guy from what I've gathered. I mean, he was someone who was certainly seemed to a lot of people at Bungie like he was standing up for what was right. He was on the front lines with people like marching, I believe, during the Black Lives Matter protests. He was like out there at protests and like was tweeting pictures of himself, and like I think he won some favor there. He's been outspoken about like progressive issues that I think a lot of Bungie people that resonate with a lot of Bungie people. He also led them to this position as the CEO, and while I think ultimately betting on a lot of incubation projects, it is kind of, I mean, there is logic behind it, right? Like you want to hedge your bets a little bit in case Destiny declines, in case Marathon doesn't pan out. You want to have a studio that is capable of doing new IP and creating new stuff, and like doing something that isn't just Destiny and Halo. But the way in which it all went down, and the kind of the speed of the layoffs, the fact that Pete Parsons hasn't really held himself accountable, certainly the fact that he still has a job even after making the decisions that led to all these other people losing their jobs, and then also the kind of the sense of optimism that he preached. I mean, there was a lot of messaging from him and from other leaders at the company that like, hey, we really have to work hard, we have to make Final Shape really awesome, the company is counting on this, it's got to be great, yada yada yada. And then for it to the team to then execute on it and make something really great that a lot of people loved, only to then have 200 people lose their jobs anyway. That has left a really, really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. The car thing, man, that's like tackiness to an extreme on one hand. I think, like, personally, I feel like we should be looking at his decisions as a leader more so than how he spends his money. Like, dude can spend his money however he wants. I think the problem is when you spend your money on like a luxury hobby and then it becomes public. And from what I've heard, he's like talked about it internally too to people.
Yeah,
like,
that's-
Yeah, there was the tweet about you.
There was that tweet,
You were saying, "Come see my cars," and then you laid us all off 2 days later, which was. And then him,
That's wild, man.
locking,
That is
locking his
wild.
Twitter account too. I think did him no favors. Like, really, if you were that afraid of pushback and seeing the pushback, I don't know, just delete the app from your phone and just
100%. Yeah, and I think it's like you have money, fine, spend it how you want, but like once it gets into public territory, I mean, I've heard stories like that before about like company. I mean, Blizzard is a great example. There's some stuff about this in my book about how like a company's founders sell their company and they get really rich, and then they come to work driving sports cars, and the people below them are like, well, what the hell, like we didn't get any of that money. Where's our Ferrari? Like, what the heck? And it really, that sort of thing just kind of hammers home the disparity, the income inequality there. I say if you have a bunch of money, just buy a bunch of Legos and keep them in your house and don't show them off to everybody. Buy a bunch of Funko Pops and start a collection.
This is the mature way to handle finance.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right. Or you know what? I mean, just get a collection of Rolexes and keep them in your bedroom and just look at them yourself. Don't show them to anyone else. Just like keep your wealthy habits to yourself and maybe like save them for the country club in the Hamptons. And that's enough.
Wanting to come back to something you said just then, are you saying that sort of Pete Parsons was putting out this message during the development of Final Shape that like, hey guys, we really need this to pop, we really need this to be great, but then in your reporting you said that the decisions to make these cuts were actually made in advance of the Final Shape's release. Is that correct?
Yeah, Totillo reported that, and that's something that I've heard as well. That's something that I can back up as well, that like this was in the works for at least a month before. I don't remember exactly when Final Shape came out, but I know that it was in the works for at least a month before the layoff actually hit. There have been rumors about it internally. People have been hearing rumors about layoffs, sharing rumors about layoffs. Nobody really knew the full scope of it or how big it was going to be, but people knew it was coming. It was in the air at Bungie.
So you're saying a month before the release of Final Shape, it was...
No, sorry, a month before the layoff. I don't remember exactly when Final Shape came out or if that was like the same about timing, but yes, it was definitely clear that like this streamlining was going to happen no matter what happened with Final Shape. I also think that it was very clear to Bungie that it wasn't like, I mean, so one thing I can share is that I heard that I think I included this in my story, but basically leadership presented a bunch of staff with this presentation that just showed that like year over year expansion sales were going down, and that's part of their thinking behind no longer pursuing these big tentpole annual expansion releases. And so I think it was very clear to them that like Final Shape wasn't going to be the next Fortnite and like suddenly bring 10 million new players to Destiny 2. Like even at its best, it had a pretty low ceiling, so it wasn't going to be able to save all these jobs, and it wasn't going to be able to stop the streamlining and stop the pressure from Sony and so on and so forth. I think the messaging from Sony, I mean, the chairman of Sony took the rare move a few months ago, I believe it was in February, of criticizing Bungie and saying they needed to be more efficient, which is pretty wild. And I think really, I mean, reading the tea leaves, I think at that point you knew layoffs were on the way. Like as soon as he said that, you knew layoffs were on the way.
Yeah. Interesting that point about, you know, annual sales of expansions declining year on year. That is something that I had sort of sensed given the player count numbers that I saw for Final Shape. That was an expansion that was like 2 or 3 times better than Lightfall, but it had a higher like peak concurrent player count, right? So I'm interested to know, in your discussions with Bungie staff, was there any sense of how Bungie got to that point? Why why was Destiny not growing? Did staff have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there are always a lot of factors with this sort of thing. I think the biggest one is just that it's long in the tooth. I mean, every online game is going to have a peak and then fall. World of Warcraft hit a peak of 12 million subscribers and then just went down from there. And that has not hit even close to those heights again. I think that was in the Wrath of the Lich King / right before Cataclysm era. And a lot of these online games follow similar trajectories. It's not like super shocking, especially with a game like Destiny 2, where as much as people have enjoyed the expansions, it is still fundamentally the same game. You're not getting like, there aren't new races, there aren't new, like it doesn't feel drastically different. And also, this is probably the biggest factor, is that there's no onboard ramp for new players. Like it is a very difficult game, almost impenetrable for new players because of all the different types of gear and proper nouns, and like the story just not even being available in full right now. Like you can't play the entire story. You had to have been there for a lot of the releases. So it's really, there isn't an onboarding ramp, which I think really cuts off the potential base of players. So I mean, with Final Shape, for example, like it wasn't like a lot of people were coming out and saying this is really cool, but it's not like people were saying this is the time to go into Destiny 2 and start playing for the first time ever. Like that was not the conversation. The conversation was, if you've been playing for 10 years, this is awesome, but that is not how you bring in new players.
Yeah, that's sadly 100% correct.
I was going to say that's like exactly the conversation we've had in the lead up to.
That's a conversation I've had about every expansion to Destiny in a long time, you know. But the difference being that those previously Destiny's had a lot of challenges in its core game, in its progression, its systems, whatever else. And ironically enough, Bungie solved almost all of those with this expansion. Like this really is a fantastic rendition of Destiny. And it's very sad to see it sort of coupled now with this narrative where the future of the game is so uncertain. One thing I wanted to ask actually is, you know, for we as players, we're really fucking bummed out to hear no more no more annual expansions. Those were a big deal for us. Did you, in your discussions with any Bungie staff, did they have a view on what that means to them? Like that personal sort of reflection on how they feel about the future of the game, did any of that bubble up in your conversations?
No, I don't think there's a lot of like, I don't think a lot of people are bummed out about that they're not going to have to keep doing these paid expansions, these annual expansions. I think the annual expansions, I think the cadence is really tough. In fact, if you look at the history of the ones that were best received were also the ones that had to slip beyond the yearly cadence. Yes. Final Shape and before that Witch Queen were the two like most critically acclaimed ones of the past few years, and both of those slipped. Witch Queen was supposed to be out in 21 and it fell to February 22, and then Final Shape was supposed to be out in February of this year but slipped to June. Whereas Lightfall, the one that was on time, everybody hated. So yeah, I mean, I think that annual cadence has always been really tough for people. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of respect for Tyson Green, the new director of the game. He's another longtime Bungie guy, super veteran dude. And I think a lot of people that I've spoke to who are, I shouldn't say a lot, at least some of the people that I spoke to who are remaining on the Destiny team specifically are optimistic about his vision for the game. And that vision, at least in the short term, is going to be like, there's definitely going to be some sort of paid content. I'm not sure what that's going to look like or how it's going to unfold. It might be those smaller packs. I'm not 100% sure. There's also going to be stuff like Into the Light, those sorts of releases. There's going to be a lot of grind stuff. There's going to be refactoring of ritual activities. That's a big part of the plan as well. And there's definitely stuff.
When you say refactoring, what do you mean by refactoring?
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. I
that's
just know
that's
like,
what someone said to you.
Yeah, well, the way it was described to me, I don't remember the exact wording. And again, this is, I got to talk about my own Destiny journey because I stopped playing at Forsaken, so I might get some of the terminology wrong.
It's a good jumping off point. You chose a good time to get off. Yeah.
I did. Well, it also, not coincidentally, my first kid was born in the fall of 2019, which was like a few months after, a year after Forsaken. So it worked out so that I pretty much stopped after having a child because you can't really play Destiny and have small children at the same time unless you only play like 8 p.m. and beyond, and then you can't play anything else. So
Sure.
wasn't gonna work for me. The ritual activity thing, I mean, what I heard was that like it was tailored, there's going to be stuff that's tailored towards what fans want. Hardcore fans want more grind, more ritual activity stuff, reworking stuff. I wouldn't be shocked if they like did some like revamps of that stuff in some way or another. And yeah, I mean, seasonal stuff is still going to happen. There's still going to be season passes. And I think that the eventual plan is to, and this is like a ways out, this is kind of pie in the sky stuff, so nothing concrete at all, but the eventual plan is to actually try to come up with like an onboarding solution, maybe rebrand it. I mean, it's still hilarious that they call it Destiny 2 and they haven't just renamed it to like Destiny, the experience, like Destiny, Destiny Infinite, Destiny Infinite, Destiny Forever. But some sort of like onboarding experience is definitely part of the plan as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that like as players, the hardcore players see what's coming, I think it'll be a little less of the doom and gloom, like, oh my God, Destiny's dead. But then again, who knows? I mean, the thing about Bungie is that I think people have always thought that Bungie had more of a long-term plan than they actually do. Like there's always been a lot of kind of short-term scrambling, last-minute scrambling to change things around, and visions kind of evolving as time goes on. So I wouldn't be shocked if they have like a more concrete plan for the next, I don't know, 6 to 12 months, and then after that it's a little more hazy. And then the other part of this equation, of course, is the human part, which is that like Bungie just lost between the layoffs and the Sony moves. They've lost something like 500, 600 people over the last 2 years, a lot of whom were on either the Destiny team or support teams like QA and narrative and audio and player support. And so losing those people, you like are losing resources, you are losing people who contributed a lot to the game, and the people who are remaining are gonna have to like work twice as hard because they have to do jobs of people who are now gone, and it's just kind of a messy situation that will just inevitably lead to challenges, unfortunately, for those people left.
And I mean, speaking of, I was gonna say, what's the temperature check on how Marathon is going?
Not great from what I've heard. There's a reason that it was planned for this year and slipped a whole year, and people that I've talked to are a little pessimistic about it even hitting its current planned deadline, but we'll see. I don't know exactly when that is, sometime in 2025, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, the sentiment I've heard is not great around it, at least as of a few months ago.
Okay, right. So, because that was going to be definitely one of my big questions is, have you spoken to anyone that's like, yeah, man, Marathon, wait till you see Marathon. Like, this is it, man. We're ready to go. Like, nothing, no one has said anything close to that.
No, and I'm not sure it's the right bet. Like, it's what, an extraction shooter? Like, so PvP, is there any PvE attached to that? Like, I don't think that that's what a lot of Bungie fans are looking for exactly. So it is kind of a strange bet, at least from my kind of subjective standpoint. The other important thing to note is that Marathon has had a big leadership shakeup. They lost a director a few months ago, got a new director a few months ago, and during this round, their executive producer left the studio as well, so they are going through some changes for sure.
So Marathon's executive producer left during this round of shakeup.
I believe that's. Let me double check the title to make sure that I'm
sure.
Yes. Yeah, oh, well, I guess, okay, so Carrie Guskus, according to LinkedIn at least, she was executive producer until April, so I guess that was the same time that Chris Barrett, who was the director, left, and then she was senior director of development. But yes, she just left. I guess she wasn't EP, she stopped being EP on Marathon in April, but she did just leave as well. So yeah, there's a huge leadership shakeup on that team in April. It'll, I guess we'll see what happens there.
And you know, you have your perspective on it as well. Speaking as someone who plays Destiny and obviously talks to a lot of Destiny people, there's not a lot of excitement for Marathon, like within the Destiny community. Like that's not what we're about at this point. Like ultimately, Destiny is right now a PvE game. It has this very awkward PvP thing bolted onto it that is essentially decayed over the years because Bungie have not invested in it. So Bungie's fandom right now is a PvE audience, and they're also older, which is something else that came out in the reporting, that the audience who plays Destiny is older. Older PvE focused players are not interested in an extraction shooter. Like, that's just not it. So Bungie really are trying to build an entirely new audience here, and it seems like they're trying to do it with this massive investment, hundreds of people, hundreds of millions of dollars spent, it seems, whereas it would have been far smarter for them to make this a smaller bet and to sort of seed it into the community and build it up over time and prototype it over time. It's just, this seems crazy to me, and I'm crossing my fingers that this is great, because it just seems so risky. You know what I mean? And I would... is there any sense of what would happen, any discussion about what would happen if Marathon didn't pop off? Did anything pop up in those discussions?
I don't want to speculate. Definitely have that conversation with people, but it would be irresponsible for me to be like, well, Bungie's going to shut down if that doesn't happen. The one thing I will say though is that this is going to lead to some exclamation points. And if we were streaming right now, there would be some funny faces in chat. But I will say the Marathon story kind of reminds me of Suicide Squad. And the reason for that is because Suicide Squad started development in 2017 when live service was the hot new thing, and because of sunk cost fallacy and because of endless delays and because there wasn't really an interest or willingness in canceling it because they had committed so much money to it, and there was just a belief that like, all right, we want to get this out, it's going to be cool, it came out and just totally flopped. And I'm worried about Marathon being in a similar situation where it's been in development for a while. It entered development when extraction shooters were super hot. I don't know if that's the case anymore, and now because they've committed so much money and because it was the project that was furthest along as opposed to all their other incubation bets, they are really putting a lot into it, and I'm just not sure there's much of a chance that it will be successful. But then again, you never know. Like, if you had asked me in January, like, I would have been like, yeah, Helldivers 2, that game is going to tank so friggin' hard. It looks like a disaster. And of course it turned out to be the biggest thing ever. So that's why I like to report and not so much to make prognostications, but still it doesn't like give me the best vibes when I hear about that. Although I did have, to your point, Ralph, this is my aged Destiny fan speaking, but I did have lots of good times with Trials of Osiris back in the day.
Sure. That was back in the day. It was good shit. And unfortunately what happened to Trials is because the PvP community shrunk so much, the only people who were playing Trials were just your hardcore sweats. And so if you weren't like a top 1% player and you stepped into Trials, you would just get dumpstered. And it became this self-fulfilling prophecy after that, you know.
So how does that go with you not being caught up on the current game lingo? Are you just lurking and doing research? Are you talking to community members? Are you talking to people like Ralph behind the scenes?
So, okay, let me back up a second. I'm going to play a little more of the context game like I did before. So Destiny came out in 2014, and I remember I got a free copy at the office. My colleague Tina Amini gave me a copy and was like, hey, check this out. I was like, I'm never going to play this, but okay, whatever. I'll pop it in at home, and wound up spending hundreds and hundreds of hours playing Destiny 1 over the months and being one of those, like, complaining about it. My wife would ask me, Jason, why are you playing that game that you just complain about the entire time you're playing it?
He's a real fan. He just like us for real.
Exactly, yeah. And so it wound up being really good for my career as well, because I was so into the game that I wound up really wanting to report on it. When I saw that story of Destiny 1 that ended with that ridiculous boss fight in the Black Gardens where like you just fight 3 robots and it's it just ends with that kind of unexplained nonsense from the speaker, and like I don't have time to explain why I don't have time to explain and all that shit. I was like, what happened here? I have to know. And I wound up talking to a lot of people at Bungie. I wound up breaking a lot of news. My Destiny story that I wrote about the behind the scenes of what happened in 2015 actually led to my now literary agent reaching out to me and being like, hey, do you want to do a book like this?
No way.
and led to me writing Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. So Destiny has been very good for my career, my obsession with that game, and I don't think I would have cared nearly enough to report on it if I wasn't obsessively playing it. Wound up having
we're not so different, you and I, Jason.
Yeah, right? Like, you know how it is. It's so interesting. Back when I was at Kotaku, we used to have this conversation all the time about how like the gaming industry is so hard to cover because unless you're immersed in a community, it's really difficult to really know it and like be able to cover it thoroughly. Fortunately, Destiny was so high interest at the time that like we were able to cover it and people really cared about it and all this news we were breaking. It was really cool. And then I had a really interesting love-hate relationship with some people at Bungie over the years, and it was a fun time. And then I stopped playing after like Forsaken, so that was what, a year into D2. D2 did not grip me nearly as much as D1 did, and I was kind of like my obsession with D1 was borderline unhealthy, and I got it all out of my system. And then since then I haven't reported nearly as much on Bungie, in large part because I'm not into the game, and so I'm not following the nitty-gritty in the same way that I used to. It was like I was reporting on very specific things in D1 back in the day, like talking to people about Yallarhorn and like why this one gun wasn't working the way it should, and yada yada yada. I remember I remember asking someone specifically, like, hey man, like, why do purple engrams drop blue gear? This is really pissing me off. Like, those are the days. Destiny 1.
That's a deep cut, man. That's a deep cut.
Yeah,
Oh
man.
God.
Destiny 1. That was a game with some problems.
Yeah.
So and then I fell off a little bit, and still have written a few things about Bungie here and there, and talked to people and kept in touch with people and so on and so forth, but definitely have not reported on the game and the developers in the same way that I used to, because I'm not as kind of invested in the day-to-day of Destiny. And then so cut to now, where I've been talking to a bunch of people for a couple of different things I'm working on, and it's I definitely have to kind of like brush up and go read the Destiny the Game subreddit a bunch, and like trying to figure out, like, someone was like, I asked someone, so what's the plan monetization wise for the future? And this person was like, okay, we're gonna do season passes, we're gonna do dungeon keys. I was like, dungeon keys? What the fuck is a dungeon key?
Good question, man.
Like,
Good question.
so I have to like really start like brushing up on this stuff in a way that I never had to before, because I knew the game cold. So it's been interesting as a reporter, just kind of having a relationship with a game, a service game, really changes the way that you are able to report on it. Also, the other part of this equation is that, like, when I was really into Destiny, I could have much better conversations with people because I knew their game well, and they would feel comfortable being like, oh, this, and this, and I could really get into it with them, which I think was a good way to get to know people and talk to them specifically about the game. So it was a fun time, but that part of my life is over now. As much as I might look over at like Final Shape longingly and be like, I wish but then again, when I read about Final Shape, it's talking about like The Witness, and I'm like, I don't know anything about who, like, I thought Nathan Fillion, I thought Cade Six was dead. Like, why is he here again? Like, what's going on?
It's a whole thing, man. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. I don't feel like I'm missing on that much.
Yeah, well, look, I do think it's a pretty great expansion. I
don't mean to demean it. I just, for my own personal, like...
Sure, I get you. Yep. I was interested in Payback because we'd heard it mentioned. I know Totillo and Grub provided a little bit of reporting on it, but then you provide a little bit more. Could you tell us what Payback was, what happened to it? Like, just give us the Payback rundown.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was tweeting that, like, hey, Destiny 3 wasn't canceled because despite these rumors, because it wasn't in development. And a couple of people were like, why you always got to shoot down Grub? And I was like, Grub didn't say Destiny 3 was in development. Like, I saw a bunch of other Destiny sites say Destiny. That's why I'm tweeting this. And people always think that I'm like subtweeting Grub when I like Grub. I was just on a podcast with them a couple months ago. Anyway.
Grub rules.
Yeah, so Payback was a project that I believe Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy, who are now no longer with the company, they were helming, and the idea was like it would be a third-person game, which I think alone makes it very clear that it's not Destiny 3. It would be a third-person game. It was co-op heavy. I think PvE mostly. I think exploring a world and just doing challenges and stuff together. whatever. And I think the kind of the core gimmick of it was that you'd play as like characters from Destiny, if I'm remembering correctly. This is me off the top of my head. I don't have my notes in front of me, but I believe it would be like heroes like from Destiny. Kind of like Genshin Impact, except the monetization wasn't going to be like gacha style, like Genshin Impact style.
It wasn't.
It was not. No,
because your thing said Warframe and as in inspirations from Warframe
Yes.
and Genshin, and I was like,
Yes.
oh no, is this like, you know what I mean?
no, the
like
part of Genshin that would be the character part, not the monetization part.
Okay.
Like the idea of like taking on these heroes, like you do in
Got
Genshin.
Yeah.
And yeah, Warframe in terms of like third person, and yeah, that was the idea, but I think it was pretty early. Like I'm not even sure how far into development it got. It was just one of those many incubation projects that have been canceled over the years. There have been multiple Destiny spin-offs, multiple tries to like figure out what comes next after Destiny 2. That was a big conversation. It's like, what is the Destiny universe? What does that look like after Destiny 2? Which they still don't have the answer to, as far as I know.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Yeah, that was a big revelation in the reporting as well. Like Destiny 3 not happening. And
which, by the way, Bungie has said publicly multiple times.
But like they're always gonna say, well, I don't know that I don't think they've ever said publicly, we are not making Destiny 3. They've never once said those words. They've always just said like, oh, we're always evaluating the future of Destiny and we've got so many bright ideas and whatever. And without committing to saying, oh, we're only going to stick with Destiny 2. Like, that's all we're going to do. So that door was open, and I think we kind of filled it with our hopes and dreams, you know what I mean? In terms of what we would like to see.
I think it's worth noting here that Bungie, of course, launched Destiny with Activision Publishing and was working with Activision for about 5 years after Destiny's launch. And the Destiny contract, which leaked many years ago, hilariously thanks to the lawsuit, the legal battle between Activision and the creators of Call of Duty, who then went on to found Respawn. Because of that, the Destiny contract leaked, and it showed that Bungie was on the hook for year 1, Destiny 1, then Destiny 1 expansion, Comet, then Destiny 2, then Destiny 2 expansion, then Destiny 3, then Destiny 3 expansion, then Destiny 4, then Destiny 4 expansion. That was the plan. And that
so
when
wild, man.
that was oh yeah, man. Which is, I mean, that's Bobby Kotick and Credentialed. God, you gotta wait till you see some of the Bobby Kotick stuff in this book. You guys are gonna get a kick out of it.
So excited.
Because he's all about annualization, and that was part of, I mean, at Blizzard, it was a big fight about why Blizzard was not able to release new World of Warcraft expansions every single year. Anyway, so this is a big tension point between Activision and Bungie, because Bungie was like, look, we don't really want to go on to make Destiny 3. We think Destiny 2 works better as an ongoing service game where we just keep adding to it, because one of the things that was most controversial, if you guys will remember, about Destiny 2 was that it was a character reset. Like, you didn't get to keep anything from D1. So the idea of like all these Destiny 2 players being committed for just 2 years and then them moving on to Destiny 3, like that was not appealing to Bungie. So Bungie and Activision, they did some negotiations. Bungie got out of the contract. Bungie got to keep the Destiny IP. And as a result of that, Bungie was no longer on the hook to make Destiny 3. And so and then we saw what happened. They just kept releasing expansions for Destiny 2 instead. So the fact that like from the beginning, this was all the current state of Destiny 2 is essentially because they didn't want to make a Destiny 3. It's hard to imagine them suddenly changing their mind about that. It's also hard to imagine where a Destiny 3 would even go, like, unless they spent 5, 6, 7 years just squirreled away making completely new races and universes and planets and everything, and even gameplay. Like, it's hard to imagine it not feeling very samey. So I don't know.
I think that's true. I mean, the counterpoint to that, I think, would be that, you know, times have changed since back then with regards to where the game is and how developed it is, how many systems it has, how big our arsenals are, you know, just the number of modifiers on our gear, you know, like there's so many that it can be, even not all season players feel this, but certainly some feel like, hey, a reset would be kind of nice at this point. It'd be nice to begin this journey again, you know? But obviously many players don't agree with that. And they're like, no, I want to keep what I have forever. I personally have never been into that idea, but yeah, I get it. I understand it.
Yeah, to be clear, the reset was much less palatable in 2019 than it
Absolutely.
would be today.
Absolutely.
The problem is that like all the people who you have on the Destiny 2 treadmill are your people who know how to make Destiny games. So like, what are you going to do? How are you going to take all of those hundreds of people and move them to Destiny 3, and then Destiny 2 is just going to go like dormant for 5 years?
Yeah.
Like, how is that going to work practically speaking? Which
Totally
which I think is like speaks to one of the problems that Bungie ran into, which is like they started all these incubation projects and none of them really paid out. And like, even if they did, how do you handle that without expanding to 2,000 staff or something insane like that? And that burn rate was out of control. And as Pete Parsons said in the blog post announcing all the layoffs, they were in the red. They were losing money. Bungie was not profitable, and that's not something that Sony is going to tolerate for very long.
Yeah, that's my question. Is there any inkling as to anything changing up with the relationship with Sony? Is Sony looking to take more control, pay a little more attention? Because the whole thing when they brought them on, they were like, we're going to let them do their thing. But obviously there's such a big reduction, and the expansion is kind of wrapping up. So how are things?
Yeah, I think that's been a little bit overblown. I'm not 100% sure because I haven't talked to people on in Bungie's board, and I think they're the ones who would really have insight on this. But I think that okay, let me go back to another Blizzard parallel here, because a large chunk of my book and a large chunk of the Blizzard story is about the Activision taking more control of Blizzard. And I think that's an interesting parallel, because what did that mean exactly? Well, in this case, it meant Activision bringing kind of an ethos of predictability and hitting deadlines, and Wall Street predictability and hitting deadlines, and like annual schedules, and like that was kind of the Activision mentality. Activision is an organization that is structured to have like the commercial stuff, the marketing on top, and developers are kind of below that, and they have very different priorities than Blizzard did. Blizzard was a culture where the developers had all the power and everyone else was subsidiary to them. So when Activision came into Blizzard, that had a very clear outcome and led to very clear tensions. I don't know that there's as much of a clear divide between Sony and Bungie to the point where it would really be like, oh man, all these Sony people are coming in, they're really going to change our culture. Don't get me wrong, Bungie has a very interesting, unique culture of its own and has its pros and cons, of course, but it's not like there is some strong ethos at Sony that runs counter to Bungie's culture and mantras and ways of making games. In fact, I would say that you look at PlayStation, they have a pretty healthy first party stable of studios, and they tend to give those teams like a lot of time and leeway and creativity, despite other than like the recent service game chasing, but that was a whole nother story, and Bungie makes service games anyway. So I don't really think that I don't know, Herman Hulse coming in and saying I'm in charge now is going to have much of an effect, other than maybe like a bunch of old school Bungie people getting mad and leaving, which could be healthy for the studio anyway. So yeah, I'm not sure what that exactly will lead to, or how much validity there is to that. That said, I mean, also the other part of this is that Sony took control when Sony paid $3.6 billion to buy Bungie. Like, we might be any talk of Bungie's autonomy is a little bit overstated, I think, because this is very much a subsidiary relationship. It's not like two parallel orgs, or like one org that is maybe like slightly below the other but has enough clout to be able to push back against pressures or something like that. This is very much a subsidiary relationship. That said, I mean, org wise, maybe Bungie is folded into PlayStation Studios at some point, but I don't really know what that does that make a difference practically speaking? I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Has any of your reporting here or elsewhere looked at sort of Sony's live service push, how that's tracking, internal chatter about that, where that's headed? Anything that you've uncovered on that front?
Yeah, I mean, how about all those Sony live service games? How about that
Concord's
Last
coming
of
out
Us
in a couple
Online?
weeks.
Oh man, yeah, Concord.
Concor's in a couple of weeks. Yep.
God, yeah, I that's very curious to see what happens with that one. Yeah, well, I was playing The Last of Us Online last week and really enjoyed it.
Of course you were.
And then
Absolutely, me too.
And then I switched to Horizon Online and just had a blast. And after that, Spider-Man Online, it was just like so much fun. Yeah, I mean, it was always just kind of like this trend chasing to the extreme. The video game industry has always just been trend chasing to the extreme, but the service game push is really one of the more egregious examples of that. And the list of like games that have been pivots from single player studios to online to like trying to make service online games that just turned out to be debacles is very, very long. And I think I've done postmortems for a lot of them. It's just like the cycle is single player studio, super successful, pivots to live service. Spent 7 years making a live service game that nobody wants. Live service game comes out, is a debacle, gets a Bloomberg postmortem written about it shortly afterwards. Like that's the cycle. And I'm glad that a company like Naughty Dog was able to stave that off and cancel their project. And yeah, hopefully it stops. Hopefully it doesn't happen anymore. To answer your question, I mean, I think the results kind of speak for themselves. Sony definitely still has. I mean, Horizon Online is actually still happening. Still in development, I should say. I don't know if it's ever actually going to come out, but still in development. So some of those games have come are still in production or have come to fruition, but I'm not sure. I mean, I guess Helldivers 2 is a success, but like
that's one question I had in terms of, we hear chatter about the idea that, you know, publishers will just put out live services expecting that 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 of them will crater, because all you need is one. And then after that, you've got your Apex Legends, or you've got your Rainbow Six Siege, or you've got your whatever, you know? And I wonder if Sony's strategy is partly that, because at one point they had greenlit 12 live services. Excuse me. 12 live services. They couldn't have expected them all to succeed. So maybe they were just fishing for one, you know?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have access to Sony's accounting, but that would be an extremely expensive strategy. It's not like, I mean, the model for that is the venture capitalist strategy with like startups, and to a lesser extent with video games, where you go and seed 50 startups and hopefully one of them becomes the next Facebook. But in that model, you're maybe seeding these startups like a couple $1 million, maybe 10 million at the most. Whereas with this live service push, I mean, Naughty Dog's Factions game was in development for something like 4 years with a team in the hundreds. Like that is an expensive proposition for something that was a miss. A lot of these and that, I mean, that project, like that getting canceled was not a bloodless endeavor. There were some heads rolling at Sony as a result of that one. So I think despite the kind of this internet punditry, I don't really think that is what Sony was thinking. I think Sony was thinking, this is a lucrative strategy. Let's push for it as much as possible. Because again, remember the times when that sort of thing would have been greenlit, when that strategy would have been greenlight, it seemed like every service game was like the hottest thing ever. I mean, the numbers, if you go back and look at the numbers of Call of Duty Warzone in 2020, it is just head exploding.
Fall Guys, like it was always
a lot of these games were just hits, like hit after hit after hit. And of course, going back to Fortnite in 2017, like you had a lot of these games that were just really hitting. So I think that more is the strategy, is like, we're going to try to emulate all these huge successes as opposed to we're going to throw out a bunch of bullets and hopefully one of them hits the target.
Yeah. Well, I think what lies ahead for Bungie is a very tumultuous period. I mean, obviously, they're going to have to kind of steady the ship after all of this. Internally at the studio, that's going to be really tough. They have to try and rebuild confidence in the future of Destiny, because right now everyone's feeling pretty low. And obviously, they have to ship Marathon in 2025 or beyond, and that is going to be a pretty risky bet, as we've discussed. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of reporting coming through, and I'm sure you'll be all across it. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we're really looking forward to having you back to talk about your book, which is dropping in October. Is that correct? Is that
coming soon? Yeah, I can't wait.
Okay.
2 months away.
Okay.
It's gonna be. I'm gonna be doing the podcast rounds. I'm gonna be talking about it quite a lot. I'm very excited for people to read this thing.
Awesome.
Come on down. You're
All
like a
right,
regular
thanks,
at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like, does he get a
Yeah,
jacket?
totally.
Do we give him a jacket?
I'm excited.
Working
I'm
on it,
excited.
working on it.
I got some excited tweets when you announced that I was coming on. Some people were like, "Oh, can't wait!" I got a couple texts. People
Nice.
were jazzed.
Okay, cool.
Uh-oh.
Awesome. Really glad to hear that. All right, well, thank you again, and look forward to chatting to you very soon.
See you, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks
Take
for
care,
having me.
bye. So, Raycon, they're back. We have been partnering with Raycon for literally years now, actually. Well, the podcast hasn't been, but I have. I know Jake
Same.
has as well.
Yeah.
So if you haven't heard of Raycons, you probably haven't been on YouTube because they're very active across YouTube. But basically, they're a really high quality, really affordable set of earbuds. Usually when it comes to earbuds, you need to spend like a lot of money. Raycon's basically, well, what if we gave you the same quality of product, but at a substantially reduced price? And that's what they've been doing forever. I've owned multiple pairs over the years because I own multiple pairs and put them in different places, like one in my gym bag, one on my bedside, or whatever else. I've also gifted them to people because they're affordable enough that you can do that. You can actually give people a pair of earbuds. Really great for like older people as well who don't even know what earbud technology is. Like they just don't. I don't know if you've noticed this, but like older people will just hold up their phone like this the whole time while they're watching a long video on YouTube. They'll just do this. And it's like, you know that you don't have to rely on the speaker. You can listen to some earbuds if you like. You know what I mean?
So older people are those hoodlums that I see on the bus?
Not quite those. I'm talking about different. But yeah, so they have made great gifts. And what's interesting about them more recently is they've actually just updated their everyday earbuds for the first time in a long time. Jake, why don't you tell what have they done?
So it's got a different but still small and convenient carrying case. It's got quick charging. It's got ANC and awareness modes to it. So, you have a little bit more options. It's essentially caught up with like modern features of earbuds, basically everything you'd want, but they're still durable. I also as well throw a pair in my bag. I also wear them when I'm doing like house chores and yard work. And, they're water resistant, sweat resistant, all that. So they just work out perfectly.
Yeah, the active noise cancelling is the biggest new feature,
Yeah.
which, obviously radically improves the listening experience. Plus, they also have multi-device connect. So you can now connect them to two devices at once and switch seamlessly between them. So like your iPad and your iPhone, for example, you can connect both of them and move back and forth between them. Fast charge battery, like it'll charge up, I forget the exact number.
90 minutes of battery after 10 minutes of charging.
Exactly.
As someone
So
who
that's
always
just
forgets to charge things before a flight, lifesaver.
Totally.
Also,
So,
they fit in your damn ears because so many of these things, like all these different types of, audio devices, they fall right out. These come with a bunch of different gel tips so you can customize your fit so they don't fall out. And with all of this, they do offer a 30-day happiness guarantee for easy returns. So it's worth a shot.
Right.
So if all that sounds good, go to buyraycon.com/friends today to get 20 to 40% off site-wide. That's right, you can get up to 40% off everything at Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/friends. That is buyraycon.com/friends. Thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring this episode.
Next up, let's not kick it off. We're already in the middle of the podcast. Let's keep going with a question from a user. This question was submitted to our Substack, believe it or not, which you can sign up for. It's friendspersecond.substack.com. Big thanks to those of you who has signed up for it. We're really excited about it. It's a cool way to, get our stuff out. It's for you to catch up if you heard us mention a game and you're like, what game was that? The Substack is perfect for that. But this question is, say you have a friend or family member who plays games, but quite a bit more casually than you. You have the opportunity to sit with them in person and show them an awesome game they have never played. What's your go-to showcase game and why? For this person, they said, I primarily play on PC and I always love to show my console family and friends Half-Life 2. It's always a hit. Despite the aging visuals, the gameplay is still awesome all these years later. We just don't get games like this anymore, even from Valve, sad face. So it feels interesting for first-time players. So what's your favorite game to showcase to someone for the first time? Love from Taylor R.
Thank you, Taylor.
Damn, that's a good question.
It's a good question, I think.
I like that he shows Half-Life 2.
Yeah.
That is a
Unexpected.
funny choice.
Bold.
Yes. And I'm funny. And I wonder, like, he says that still hits. I'm like, okay, all right. I'm surprised to know that it would still hit. I think some people would look, because there's a lot of, like, downtime in Half-Life. It's very much about, like, the space between things as much as it is, like, the... So that's surprising. That's cool, though. I like it.
Red Dead.
Yeah, I don't know.
Red Dead
Red Dead
2.
Okay,
Interesting. Actually, it's a different. It's a different. I don't know why I didn't like a little Mario voice. The Last of Us opening.
Yeah.
The Last of Us opening is always like, look what video games do now. Sometimes
They can make you cry.
They can make you cry. Red Dead 2, like walking around the open world and everything. And then for my dad specifically, stuff like The Room, puzzle games that are like Myst. He loves puzzle games, so Talos Principle, stuff like that.
I will second the Red Dead thing. I showed a family member who was older and not really familiar with video games, or really not caught up on them. Saw me just play a few minutes of Red Dead, where I literally like hunted a boar, took the carcass, loaded it onto the horse, hopped on the horse, giddy up, rode to a place, hopped off, spoke to a man, and the family member watching was like, how do you remember to press all the buttons to do that stuff? And I was like, I am a genius. Thank you. Thank you for asking. That's an excellent question. It is a talent.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we like gravitate towards cinematic games, because my first thought was something like maybe God of War, you know, like because you can really just see the emotion that comes through, the visuals, like even in those first opening lines of that game, you can feel what that game is doing, do you know, like with the delivery of those lines and the framing of those characters. And yeah, I mean, but like, I don't know, like, it's interesting that we just go to these cinematic games where it's like, why isn't it Tetris connected or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Like, why isn't it like that shit?
Well, I was gonna suggest
it's just raw gameplay.
Yeah.
Beat Saber is another one that I have done, because I remember when I got a dance mat when I was a kid, my mum got really into it with me. We, dancing to that 90s Euro beats.
Love it.
And so Beat Saber, I took to my friend's house one Thanksgiving, and we danced to the Lady Gaga pack, and it was great.
Does sound like a good time, not gonna lie.
It should be gameplay first. I think the closest I've come is fire up a racing game, like a high fidelity racing game, and be like, look, you could drive a car. The only thing is, I think for me, is that I just haven't had a lot of opportunities to introduce games to people. The last time I really did was when I got my own place, and I got an OLED, and Spider-Man 2018 had just come out, and so I was just like, look at this, and would just like have, this when it's like the sunset and the music's blaring and you're just swinging, and I would hand the controller to people and be like, you fucking seen a Spider-Man movie? Press R2, see what happens. And most people pick it up and they're like, holy shit, this is crazy, this is a video game, and that's always a nice reaction.
Yeah,
that's true. I think Spider-Man's a good example, actually, because I think that is super cinematic in that Sony game way, but it's also very video gamey, because you're Spider-Man, and like Spider-Man, the way he moves is impossible, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the being able to do that in a video game really works. And yeah, I completely agree with that. That's a really great suggestion. Yeah, I don't know, it's really fascinating. I don't know, could you are there any indies that you would like hand over the control and be like, check this out, man? Little indie titles that really jump out at you.
I think the one I have tried to like push on people a little bit is a weird one, but Hotline Miami. Just because I think there's such a good crossover with it just being so unique, and like, hey, have you ever seen the movie Drive or American Psycho? Well, check out this game. It's just got that like cool grime grit to it, and the neon colors, and it's easy to like understand, and people will quickly get like the one or two people I did show it to got really hooked on that, like, oh, just one more run, just look, okay, I died, oh, I died again, and they very quickly get that like lizard gamer brain, and that's nice to see.
I think Vampire Survivors is great for that too.
Sure.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
if you're talking about pure lizard brain activation, then Vampire Survivors.
I think like Nintendo games in general, again, you know, like you could say, okay, let's play some Smash together. And it takes like, if you both suck at Smash and you start playing it together, it'll be fun. If one of you is really good, it's going to be terrible, right? But if you both suck, it's going to be a good time. Mario Kart, jump straight in there, you play Mario Kart, everyone understands the fundamentals immediately, off you go. But even, you know, your Mario games like Mario Wonder, it's such a crazy game at all times, especially when those Wonder transformation things happen. Like there's so much spectacle in that that would hold your attention and make you go, I wouldn't mind doing a little bit of that, or Mario Odyssey or whatever. So I think quite a few of the Nintendo games would be able to do that. Like Tears of the Kingdom, you show them that jump off the top, you know, and then hand them the controller after they land on the ground. You know what I mean? Like that's a thing. I'm gonna want to push forward on that shit, you know. So
I'm fortunate enough to have both of my grandmothers in my life. And I know confidently that neither of them have seen a video game in 30 years because the last time they probably saw it was me playing one as a kid. So what would you guys show a grandma? Like an old Italian grandma?
The Sopranos
that's
game.
That's a good question. Yeah.
That's racist. That's not.
Yeah, Mafia, the Mafia 1 remake. They're like, just like I remember. I'm Italian, so I'm allowed to do it.
That's
Okay,
good.
like I got a nod or two.
Damn, I'm just Dutch.
Yeah, what would you show an old I
want to like brain blast them. I want them.
Oh, I was thinking like I was
like,
thinking like Stray or something sweet.
All right, you're thinking of something else, like show them like Thumper or something, some fucking scary ass rhythm game. They're just like flying down some chute, but you left and right. Yeah,
Hellblade 2.
Oh god.
Ooh, that would freak them out. No, that's not a good suggestion at all.
There's
That's
a woman
not
on the
nice.
screen. She lives in the TV.
So actually,
she's got voices in her head.
So shout out to so a friend of mine, Gav Murphy. He recently lost his nan. But he used to work for CVG in the UK, and he had a video series called Gamer Gran, where he would get his gran to review games, and the big bar for quality for Gamer Gran was, is it better than Star Trek? And it was never better than Star Trek.
I love that.
She was so sweet.
That is it. That's it.
But
That's why all the executives want the IP, man. They know what works. Star Trek.
Well, she also used to, every time he would show her something, like he would show her Hotline Miami, and she would go, she's a lovely Welsh woman, she'd be like, did you make that? You make that, Gavin? She's just like, no.
That's so wholesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Taylor R., thank you for the question. That was a good one.
Question. Yeah, it was very
next
good.
up, let's move on over to our conversation with some former Game Informer folks. We got Alex Van Aken, Marcus Stewart, and Brian Shea. We're thankful for their time. So let's just jump into this. Marcus, Brian, Alex, thank you guys for being here. The circumstances are certainly unfortunate, but we definitely wanted to get your insight as to everything going on, how you guys are feeling. Game Informer is a magazine that we all have been fans of. And I say all, I don't just mean the podcast, like most gamers. It's been around for, it was a 33-year run. Is that correct? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this kind of made waves, and we thought this was a good time to check in. Brian, how are things on your end?
It's sad to see such an amazing era of my life and my career end. You know, I loved working with the people on this call, as well as the other people who are not on this call. Like, it was just a fantastic team that we had. And, you know, I've been at Game Informer since 2015. So it's, almost a decade. Like, I was at 9 years and 8 months, and I was like, man, it would be so cool if I could just make it to a decade. So it was kind of a bummer in that regard. But, it sucks because, not only am I out of a job, and I'm out of, working with the amazing people that I've worked with for the past several years, but also my favorite magazine and website no longer exist. And that is like extra insult to the already devastating news that we got on Friday.
Yeah, that leads me to the status of some of the stuff you guys have worked on. Like, Alex, are videos still accessible as of right now? I think the website is not.
the website is currently not. Videos as of right now are. It's been, it seems very short-sighted, and seems like it was like a very last minute kind of thing, the way that all this rolled out. It's been shocking. Today is actually my first day of real unemployment. Yesterday I had a PTO booked with some freelance stuff, and so today was like, all right, I'm waking up and I don't have anything to do today for Game Informer. So yeah, it's been a weird day.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point about the way that it was done, and for context, if you're unaware, it's, you know, the website just reflects to the like the farewell post, and not being able to access articles and stuff. But I wanted to kind of, you know, not dwell on that too much, but I did want to say that, like, you've had an amazing outpouring of support from readers, but also folks like, you know, the Min-Max community trying to go and grab as much as they can and archive it on the Wayback Machine. I mean, Marcus, obviously there's a lot of emotions happening right now. How's it all played out for you?
It's been weird. It's probably the word. Kind of echoing what Brian and Alex have said. It's because it was so sudden. It's your entire life just gets flipped upside down within a few minutes, and it's like I've had a weekend to let it sink in. It still hasn't totally settled yet, and honestly, I'm more bummed about just the site and the just Game Informer itself going away more so than me not having a job, because ultimately, like, that sucks, but it's like I'll find something else, but it sucks that I can't go look at, you know, the site, like either look at my stuff or all of the amazing work that my coworkers and those who came before me put together over the years. You know, all I have are the physical issues of the magazine that I have, but just all of that work and effort is just sort of off to the ether. So that's been something I've just been, I guess, grappling with. But as you mentioned, the outpouring of support from everyone has been incredible. It's a lot like, I've never personally had anything like this happen to me, but I've seen it happen to so many of my peers, unfortunately, with, you know, just over 2 years now, like layoffs and stuff like that. And it's like the weirdest thing it's the closest thing I could think of to going to your own funeral. You're like, oh man, I didn't realize this many people liked the thing that we did, or the thing that is something that I did specifically. That's cool. And I have a weird thing with, like, internalizing praise anyway. So it's been like a lot of, well, I got to get better at this now, I guess, suddenly. But it's been extremely heartening, and, you know, big shout out to everyone that has reached out with either kind words or potential job opportunities. It's, you know, thank you so much. That's all I can say, but it's been a doozy. Yeah.
I mean, you guys probably have to be a little bit careful about what you say in regards to this context. I'm sure there's all these difficult things when you're exiting one company and what have you. We don't have to worry about that. We can say whatever the fuck we like. And I would say that, you know, the way that the outcome sucks for sure, but the way that they did it sucks way more. Like, just to nuke that entire website in that way, all of that history immediately inaccessible, just to save on some fucking hosting fees, mind you, which would be less than a rounding error for a company the size of GameStop. That's fucked. Like, that's truly just such a shitty thing for them to do. And also that farewell, you know, like that note that you guys, that they put up, the farewell, the AI message, which everyone hypothesized was AI. And then, you know, you guys put up your own message, and then that got nuked. Extremely shitty, just such a bummer. And like, you guys really deserve better. That publication deserved better for its history, and you as people deserve better as well. So it's really shitty to see it.
Do you guys know of the status of so we know that, like, with the website there's the digital stuff, but the physical stuff, like, you guys had rooms full of old copies of the magazines, all kinds of archive stuff, old games. Is that just, like, locked up in a ghost room now? Like, where's that history going?
We pretty much have our hands cleaned of it at this point. Like, we were told in the meeting at 10 a.m. Central on Friday, when we were informed that we were going to be laid off effective immediately, that we will lose access to everything, and that proved true. We lost access to our email pretty much immediately, and we no longer have access to our office our office room that we had, which housed all of that stuff. I will say that I did go into a GameStop over the weekend, and they did seem to have Game Informer issues on clearance. So I guess if you're missing any recent issues, now's your chance to get your hands on some history.
They got the buy two get one on that.
I think they were just like $3 a piece.
Wait for Pro Day. There's gonna be a big
savings. Yeah.
But yeah, on the front of like the Mac or the website being nuked, we I think are in a bit of a lucky position in some regards, because we did have a physical medium that we did publish. So it's not like all of our work is immediately lost, but the easiest way to share it is. And I'm a big proponent of preservation. I do worry like I have like some of my favorite like photos that I've had with like developers and everything. Like I have like this picture right here. I've literally printed out this picture of me with Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo because I like am anxious about like the digital dark age that I keep hearing about, where it's like, oh well, if like the internet goes down, we just lose all of our memories from this from like this era, where it's like, oh, we just post on Instagram and assume it's going to be there forever. But like, sometimes it might be self-imposed. So like it's sad from a preservation perspective, but also a historical perspective, because we do have every month by the end of our cover story cycle, when we would like do our cover story hubs and everything and post all of our stuff, at the end of that we would usually post our cover story in its entirety, just for the sake of preservation. So it is kind of sad to see that go away as well. In addition to all the other like historical stuff, like our reviews that have only appeared online, and features, news, all that stuff. I think that it's fair to say that like people in games media, one of the main currencies that they operate on and deal in is their byline, and it's sad that like so much of the work that our staff has done is just gone, aside from Internet Archive, which thank God for that.
Yeah, I've been making hefty use of that over the last couple days to try to grab some stuff.
I think the cover story thing that you mentioned there, like that was really, for me personally, I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but that was sort of how I saw Game Informer. Like that, the crown jewel of the content offering was that cover story. Because who's doing cover stories these days? Like IGN first do a cover story in their own way. Edge magazine still get a cover story.
I love Edge.
By the way, I'm still a subscriber. There's like you can't see them, but behind me there's a big fat stack of Edge magazines. But who else is doing cover stories? Like, no one really, you know what I mean? And you guys were doing a fantastic job of it for so long. Like, for me, you guys were synonymous with the idea of a cover story. Just in case anyone doesn't know, by the way, cover story is the thing where a developer will invite you into the studio and they will, show you the game in a way that they don't show other outlets. And you do massive, like 12, 15 page spread, and you just get this level of access that only comes when you're very trusted by those developers. Not because you're singing from a hymn sheet or whatever, because they just trust you to have integrity, to like present their game in a way that they would, you know what I mean? Like, in a
we're
way
going to be fair.
Fair, exactly right. You know what I mean?
And it's historical. For a lot of the time, it was like the first look at that game. And sometimes there were magazine covers where it was an early concept of the game that the game didn't even end up looking like. Like the original Borderlands 1 cover story like doesn't ultimately look like what Borderlands is, but that was enshrined on that cover story.
It's been so nice to see a lot of devs post we were always so honored to get the Game Informer cover.
Alex.
Oh, I was just gonna say one of the things I grabbed from my personal stash before I left was the Tiberium Wars. It was like an old Command and Conquer FPS that was supposed to come out. Game Informer revealed it, and then it got canceled. And I love those old pieces of history.
Yeah. It's really sad that like that does kind of leave like a a void in the industry for telling those kinds of stories. And obviously there's journalists out there doing fantastic work. But I mean, even just like the one that we had on the horizon, like I was so excited for it. It was gonna freaking slap. Like that. This upcoming issue was gonna be great.
Could you
cover
reveal
art to
what
the
that
story?
is?
No, we
we
never will, unfortunately.
That's such a bummer.
But it's one of the more anticipated games for the rest of the year. We got pretty unprecedented access.
Can you say the genre?
No, I don't think that's a good idea.
I think it actually has kind of leaked accidentally, but I mean, we won't talk about it now. But yeah, I mean, that is very disappointing. Regardless of what it was, it would have been really cool to see that. And I'm interested to hear like your thoughts on the nature of print media as it exists, because this conversation is complex. Because obviously there's the website, which is a very important part of what you do. There's the YouTube channel and that stuff as well. But print magazines, I think, is really sharply in focus here, because that is really going the way of the dodo pretty quickly. I mean, it's already dead. That's it feels like that, and it feels like there's just a couple of there were a few outlets keeping it alive, and you were one of them. What are your sort of reflections on on the importance of print media? Like, why did you think it mattered, and why do you think it still needs to continue? If you do think that at all, maybe you don't think it needs to continue.
I mean,
you go, Marcus.
I think what happened to our site is probably the number one reason why physical media in general is important, because that you have a physical record of all of this work and all of this history, interviews that you can't find anywhere else, features, opinion pieces, reviews. This, that thankfully we have 368 magazines that you can find somewhere that have all of that written down. I mean, it's just, as someone that still very much prefers reading physical books as opposed to like a Kindle, I don't know, there's something, and maybe I'm romanticizing it too much, but there is something just nice about just being able to sit down and open up a physical thing and flip through pages and not stare at a screen, if nothing else for health reasons, but also just to there's something just tactile and maybe more engaging to just sit down with something and to really appreciate it more, because it isn't as fleeting as something that you can just scroll through. Like, I don't know, maybe you just, maybe I find myself just absorbing what I'm reading easier, and also the incredible layouts that our graphic design team would create for the magazines that, like, I can't tell you the number of times I've written either a cover story or a big feature, and, when you're looking at it, it's just words, like, oh, okay, I think that's pretty good, I think. And then when you see it, the finished product, and see what our graphics team like Leia and Monica would put together, and you're like, oh my God, this looks infinite, makes it look even better. And, you eat with your eyes first, right? So just to there's something about that you can do with digital, but again, there's something about seeing it in print and just like appreciating it as an art piece as much as it is just like literary content. And selfishly, for me, as someone that aspires to write a book one day, there's like a prestige in writing something that shows up in print. As much as I've written a lot of stuff online, obviously, and it's always cool to see your name next to something, but there's something extra special when you get something printed out that you wrote with your name on it, that again, you can go up to people and go, hey, look, I wrote this. It's pretty cool, huh? It's my name. So there's a bunch of reasons why, but yeah, I hope that it lasts as long as it can when I think of the remaining places like Edge and whatnot.
Yeah, and also, like, I would push back on just the general notion. I've seen it online and stuff in the past few days of like, well, of course it's shut down. It's 2024. It's a physical magazine, and I would say, like, even though print media is in decline, that doesn't mean print media isn't profitable. It's just what are you attached to, right, financially? For us, we were underneath of a parent company that is a retail company first, not a media company. And when you're looking at, you got to make cuts. This magazine over here, as beloved as it is, you can cut that and still sell retail.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas if you cut elsewhere, that might break something. And so I think that's kind of what it came. This is pure speculation. But yeah, I think print media can be successful. I see Edge is still going, like you said. I'm a big fan of Lost in Cult, what they're doing over there.
Yeah, those yeah, for sure.
Nintendo Force.
Profound waste of time.
Yeah. I think you've just got to find somebody that is maybe less greedy than other places in terms of who's giving you money, what kind of VCs backing it, that kind of thing. I think it can be successful.
Yeah. I mean, I really agree with that. I think, and I think you're seeing a lot of the rise of user-funded media outlets. You know, obviously that's in the digital space. It's not, but even then, like I think these smaller publications like Lost in Cult and Profound Waste of Time, they're very much based about like, well, this is how many units we're going to make because this is how many units we think we're going to sell. We're going to turn a modest profit on this, and we're going to try and do it again next time. And it's working, and they are able to keep going. You know, so yeah. I mean, for me personally, I think. It's so print media I really value a great deal because it's so anti-algorithm. It's everything we consume right now is driven by the algorithm, which is very much based upon what makes you angry. You know, like it's about like what enrages you, or just like or drama or clickbait or whatever else. And like, don't get me wrong, like I get it. Believe me, I came up through that. Like I get it, 100%, right? But at the same time, there should be a space where that doesn't exist, and it's just a thing where you can sit down and just get some good solid coverage. It doesn't give a fuck about any of that stuff. It's just like we're printing out this 5-page or this 3-page, you know, interview with a developer because we think it's interesting. That's it. There's nothing in here that's going to make you super mad, or nothing necessarily headline grabbing, but it's just a good conversation that we had with someone that we think is worth sharing, and we hope you find it interesting. And that's why I love print, because it's just letting you connect with this hobby in a way that feels so different to the digital landscape right now, you know? And I try to incorporate. I feel like I've tried to incorporate print media principles into my content more and more over the years, because I've tried to make it disconnect myself from the drama and the clickbait and whatever else. And I mean, sure, you got to do what you got to do sometime if you're operating a digital platform, for sure, right? But I think the closer we can get to what print is doing, the purity of that print's approach, I think there's something in that that's really worth protecting. And yeah, that's why it makes me sad every time I see another outlet close down.
Yeah, and it, you know, that's something that we really prided ourselves on especially on the print side of things, was we didn't have to be beholden to, all right, is this like the sexiest headline ever that's going to get like X number of clicks? It was like, hey, this game looks really cool. Doesn't matter that it's from an indie developer. It doesn't matter that it's like a game that nobody's ever heard of. We can devote page space to it because we think it looks cool. And then by extension, people will see that, and then they will think it looks cool. And then, you know, maybe that's a way that we can be tastemakers and shine a light on some games that, you know, if we wrote about it online, it might get like, you know, 700 clicks. But like if we write about it in print and we give it a couple of pages, then people who are thumbing through it will see it and be like, oh, wow, this is like a really cool looking art style or whatever. Or this game sounds really cool. And then, you know, we don't have to worry about kind of, like you said, the algorithm or the SEO of any of that stuff. We can just shine a light on things that we think was cool. And that was a nice outlet for us in that regard.
God, that sounds so nice.
That's it, man. That's it.
I do want to ask, I think people don't realize how small of an operation Game Informer was towards the end. You guys were putting together a full-fledged, full-featured magazine on a pretty small crew. That takes a lot of hard work, but I assume...
Among other things.
Yeah, exactly. Among all the other things you guys are doing. So I imagine that what was that like with such a small team? Were you just like fueled by passion? How did it go the last couple of...
Like we constantly got the question of, why aren't you putting up IGN numbers? And the answer was I would always give is, go to IGN's staff page and look at their social media team. And then look at that compared to our entire staff, and it's bigger than our entire staff at the end there. You know, when I joined, we had 18 editors and a fully staffed design team, fully staffed marketing team. By the end, we had 7 editors. We had 1 marketing person. We had 2 graphic designers, and we had 2 programmers and 1 video person. That would be Alex. And we had a daily website, a weekly podcast, a weekly Twitch channel, and every 5 weeks magazine. And like, you know, we had almost as many pillars as we had editors on staff.
Yeah.
And it was just absurd.
That's crazy.
And that's also the accounting the times when one or more of us would be out of the office on a trip of something.
Heaven forbid you go on a vacation.
Yeah, there were several times where we
insane.
had like a family emergency or somebody got sick, and it was like, well, I hope we can finish this magazine. It really is a miracle that over the last few years we did not miss an issue.
Yeah, that's wild.
I think the only way it happened was everyone got their hands dirty in various things. You know, the writers would help me edit gameplay videos for our new gameplay series. I would write a magazine feature. I would proof the magazine some days, or Brian would come on or somebody else would come on and like, hey, I'm going to jump into the podcast. I know we're down people. I'm not normally on. I'm not supposed to be on this week, but I'm going to jump in. And it was like that constantly. Yeah.
And also, I want to shout out our editor-in-chief, Matt Miller, because throughout all of that, he was always extremely conscious about our well-being and our work-life balance, and was always stressing, like do what we can, but if we can't make it happen, like if we have less people, then it's better to just produce less than try to produce the same amount of output as, you know, GI at its peak, because it just doesn't make sense. So
he talked me out of like several projects because he was like, I don't want you to do that because you don't have the time. You're gonna have to sacrifice something else to have that time, and I don't want you to.
Yeah,
I can. He was to the point of, I don't even know if nagging is the word because it's got a negative connotation, but I cannot tell you the number of DMs I've gotten where he's, you know, I said I'm gonna go look at this, like take on something that maybe I wasn't assigned. He's like, "Are you sure? Are you good? Can you handle that? Are you? You don't have to. Like, yeah, you just make sure that, you know, you're taking care of yourself." And, you know, that's pretty rare to find in a supervisor, a boss, what have you. So I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to do so well and stay as maybe as healthy mentally as we could be, given the circumstances, when you have someone like that it was actively trying to make sure that we were all doing well and not killing ourselves.
Yeah. Matt did a fantastic job. He slid into that role, I believe, in 2021 or 2022, whenever Andrew Reiner left. And he could not have done a better job. I think Matt Miller deserves all the flowers in the world for his leadership and, you know, just looking out for the various members of the staff, whether it was our designers, our programmers, or our editors. Like, he was constantly very encouraging of us to take whatever time we needed if, you know, we were feeling overwhelmed. And, you know, it would be very easy for somebody in that same position to be like, no, we need to work more in order to make up for the fact that we have a smaller staff. But, you know, he had a very good balance of, we do need to work hard to get our stuff done, but like, I don't want you to work like to the point that you're going to, like, you know, resent this job that we should all love because it's a dream job, or, you know, just any kind of way that's going to make us sacrifice our mental health, our mental well-being, or just our work-life balance. He was very cognizant of that, and I'm forever grateful of how he handled that.
Yeah. I love that guy.
Yeah.
Literally, I actually love him as a person. He's the best. And he's not really on social media. I think
Respect.
I love that. Love him.
I
even
was
more.
talking to him when I went to drop off my some stuff to him, and I was like, hey, you should maybe be online a little more these days, just so so we can all, you know, shout you out because you were such an excellent boss. And he was with the company for 26,
something like that.
Yeah.
So
very
it's
long
funny.
time.
When I joined Game Informer, I remember I joined in January of 2015, and, you know, I had a couple days in the office, and then we went out to a dive bar, as we used to a lot when we had a physical office. And I remember Matt Helgeson said something where I was like, just kind of like trying to like process all the new people, the new faces, the information. And I brought up Matt Miller, and Matt Helgeson said, that might be the most well-adjusted human being I've ever met in my life. And I think, like, even to that day, that has ring true, because he is just like, you know, he has the perfect temperament for any kind of position, such as what he had at the end there. And, you know, just a truly amazing human being to work with and also be a friend of.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, you've all been involved in some incredible, pieces. Is there anything that you're particularly proud of, or an interview or a trip that was particularly memorable? Like, what have been some of your highlights?
Who wants to go first?
Marcus, go ahead.
Oh boy.
Don't be bashful.
I mean, again, this goes back to my I'm not proud of myself often enough. One of my second to last cover story for Hades 2, that was probably out of the 7 cover stories I wrote, that one was probably my favorite. One, because that came together very quickly, because it was an unexpected cover story due to some things changing last minute. So that one had to come together, I think, within the span of less than a week to go out and visit Supergiant and put together all this stuff. I did that with Alex, and getting to talk to that team, who I'm a huge fan of anyway. I love everything that they do. So getting to meet them for the first time and play the game and record all these interviews, the cover art.
This one.
Probably my favorite cover art.
It's beautiful.
Great cover art, man. Great.
Yeah,
cover.
Gen Z was incredibly excited to put that together, because apparently she was a huge GI fan back in the day.
She used to work at GameStop and sell GI.
Right, of course.
So she was gushing to us about I cannot wait to make this cover for you guys. So that one was a lot of fun. There was one that I did with Blake Hester, our former editor, who's fantastic. My first trip to Japan, I did a piece where I toured Kabukicho with Jake Adelstein, the author of Tokyo Vice, to do sort of a yeah, we reached out to him to do sort of an on the ground tour of Kabukicho to sort of find the parallels between it and Kamurocho from the Yakuza / Like a Dragon series, and also get his insight as someone that was on the Yakuza beat for so long as a investigative reporter. And so it was just me, Blake, and him just walking around, and he's just telling us all these wild stories, and we're going to these spots that you've seen in the Yakuza games, like the batting cages and in the arcades, and he's just telling us I saw 2 Yakuzas get into a huge fight and crack a guy with a baseball bat, and he actually told us that he saw someone fight with a bicycle one time, which was
legit.
Yeah, he's because he only has a cursory knowledge of the games. He's yeah, I've seen that, and yeah, that's a thing I've seen I've witnessed before. So just because that's one of my favorite features, because it was something very different for me. Just something that's a travel piece, and then getting to hang out with this accomplished author, and also just get to know Blake better, because that was the first time I think we had ever met in real life, because we're both remote. So that was one that I hold pretty close to me. That I love that one.
Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I've got a couple. A lot of mine are videos. One of them's not. I'll start with the written piece I was really proud of. I tracked down the costume designers behind all of those old weird real life looking Nintendo commercials, like the Animal Crossing stuffies, the old Mario Party commercials were then the
Smash Brothers.
Yep. Yeah, and it turned out that the costume designers were also the stunt people, and they told me about near death experiences, Tim Fireball Tim was the guy's nickname. Him and his wife were the 2 costume designers, and they kind of helped run the show. And he told me I almost drowned in a Yoshi costume in a pool. I was seconds away from literally dying.
Fuck.
And they a lot of cool anecdotes about that. And
imagine coming out to a pool and just seeing a Yoshi floating face down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god.
So if you can find that on the archive, it's called Behind This Dangerous Stunts of Nintendo's Iconic Mario Commercials. That was one of my favorites. But I think video, both of mine actually have to do. We've mentioned Blake Hester on the show a lot. He was he's one of the best reporters in the industry. He's one of my best friends. We used to live half a mile from each other, so that's my guy. And we were also kind of a little dynamic duo when it came to doing some documentary stuff at Game Informer. We took Derek Yu, the creator of Spelunky, into a cave mouth, and it was. I remember I had my Blackmagic Cinema camera, and we're just staring up at this nearly 90-degree, 20-foot like piece of like rock face that we had to scale up. And I remember feeling so bad because I was like, Derek Yu was like in much better shape and much better, like he's like an outdoors guy kind of. I was like, can you help me carry my equipment up, Derek, even though we're interviewing you? And I just he was so gracious, and I loved the way that video turned out. I did that one with Blake, and then probably the last one would be for the 10th anniversary of Broken Age. We went and met up with Double Fine and took them to Red's Bar in San Francisco, which it's in Koreatown, and it's like the place that they dreamt up Broken Age. And so we took them back to that place and had them reminisce, and we kind of reunited a lot of the Double Fine crew who had split up and kind of gone their separate ways. And they just talked about, they just reminisced. So that was probably, that one's still available to watch, and the Spelunky one on the Game Informer YouTube channel.
Also, I wanted to shout out your Humanity documentary.
Yes.
Oh, that was a fun one. Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. The puzzle game Humanity with the Shiba Inu.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
Yeah. So what about you, Brian?
I mean, the ones that stick out immediately, I mean, it doesn't help that I'm looking at like all of the cover stories that I've written framed directly in front of me, but like my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth cover story was just an unforgettable experience. Alex was with me on that one. We went out to Tokyo, visited Square Enix, got to sit down with, Naoki Hamaguchi on the first day, who's the director of Remake and Rebirth. We did the rapid fire interview, which is still on the YouTube channel. That was so much fun. And then the second day was just interview. And we got to sit down with Motomo Toriyama and Teruki Endo, who was the battle director of the Remake and Rebirth games. And then we had a 2-hour-long sit down with Tetsuya Nomura, Yoshinori Kitase, and Naoki Hamaguchi. And they really opened up to the point that at the end, like, I've always heard these like stories of like, oh, well, if you don't know what you're talking about, Tetsuya Nomura will just completely check out. And like we got to the 2-hour mark, and like Tetsuya Nomura was like, can we keep going? And it was like, okay, well, I guess it went okay. But that was just like a really cool experience. The image of the cover art that they gave us, which was partially designed by Tetsuya Nomura, of Sephiroth standing just shrouded in flames, is absolutely gorgeous. I enjoyed writing the Sonic cover stories for both Frontiers and Superstars. It's great to have a relationship with Sega in that way, where they came to me first for a lot of these opportunities. I also think my Street Fighter 6 cover story was one that I really valued, getting to go out to Capcom in Osaka, and not only
my first time in Japan.
That was fun.
With you.
Yeah, we had a great time. We flew into Tokyo. Well, first we flew to San Francisco, stayed one night. Then we flew to Tokyo, and then took the bullet train from Tokyo to Osaka. And we were both just zombies by the end of it. But we went to Capcom for a couple of days. Got to sit down with Matsumoto and Nakayama, the producer and director of Street Fighter 6, the ones that righted the ship on Street Fighter 5, and just really dug into like how they're approaching Street Fighter 6. And it ended up being a really good story. And then also I got a history of the Street Fighter franchise out of that, so I wrote I think it was like an 8-page history of Street Fighter, and then that led directly into the cover story of Street Fighter 6. So it was like this look back and then a look ahead, and I really enjoyed that. And like the cover art with Ken just kind of brooding is fantastic.
Getting to see the archive in Capcom.
Oh yeah, we got to go. They took us up to the archive, which there was no cameras, nothing, and we got to see like all the original art that like is so famous within the Street Fighter franchise.
They wouldn't let one of the PR people in the room because they were like,
"What the fuck?"
They were like, "That's too many people."
Whoa.
God. All right. Fair enough.
We got to do that. And then we got to go out to an arcade. I've always tried to propose like cool, like extracurricular activities with these like legendary developers. So when we were out there in Osaka, I proposed to the Street Fighter 6 developers, hey, would you mind like showing us some locations around Osaka that like inspired like maybe some levels in Street Fighter 6? And they're like, oh, there's not really any of that. I was like, fine, can we go to an arcade and play Street Fighter? And they're like, yeah, we could do that. So like Alex had to go and get like a permit with the the arcade and everything, because they're very particular about public filming in Japan.
Oh yeah, sure.
So we did that, and then like we just recorded them like playing against each other in this arcade. And like Nakayama, the director of Street Fighter 6, afterwards was like, oh, I used to deliver the ROMs to this arcade back before I was like a key development team member.
Wow.
So it was like a full circle moment. And like you can go watch like the video of them in that Osaka Taito game station that we recorded that in on the YouTube channel as well. But yeah, that entire trip was fantastic. But like those are the ones that, on the cover at least, that immediately spring to mind as like my most proud accomplishments. And then this one that we had coming was one that I was very proud of as well.
That's cool.
So I think we need to talk about the future. I would love to know where you guys where your heads are at in terms of what you're working on, what you're cooking up. Marcus, what are your plans? Throwing out the resume, working on. You're going to start writing that book.
Yeah, that's the fun/scary part, and the only difference is whether or not I remember to breathe. I don't know. I have idea. There's some like work in progress stuff that I had going at Game Informer that I'm trying to find homes for currently. I'm planning to go to Gamescom. That's still like a green light. So if anyone's going to that, you'll see me there.
See you there, man.
And after that, I'm still figuring it out. There's some ideas that I have. There are some options I have in front of me. It's been a lot of sort of sitting down and really thinking about like what I want to do, because I have and maybe we all have this, the rare hard-earned luxury of being able to say, oh, I did my dream job. Like Game Informer was my dream job, like not just games media, specifically GI, and I did it for 4 years. And to be on the other side of saying, well, I did my dream, now what, is something I appreciate, honestly, and that's something I'm trying to keep in mind in general, is just gratitude that I have for everything. You know, even though it didn't end the way I wanted it to, I am incredibly happy for everything that the job brought me and the position that it has put me in now. So even though I haven't quite figured out what is next for me or how that's going to unfold, I guess I'm excited and confident that whatever life has in store for me next is gonna be just fine. It'll work itself out, basically. Like that's when I calm myself down to times I get like super anxious. Like it'll be fine. You'll bounce back, and who knows? It's another adventure on the horizon, right?
Well said. Alex, what about you? What are you
Yeah,
cooking?
it's hard to follow up with Marcus's optimism is magnetic. To the point we travel a lot together, and I would sometimes be annoyed at him because we would land and I'm exhausted, and he's going on he literally, the last cover story we went on.
Yeah, our last cover technically too, by the way.
Oh yeah.
The last one to go out, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see if it should show up in mailboxes.
It's out digitally, the Frank Stone issue.
I think people are going to be getting maybe Game Informer issues in the next couple of weeks.
I think those Frank Stone issues those could be collector's items. I don't know if everybody will get them. We'll see.
We don't have to Behavior Interactive, but like it's middle of heat wave in Montreal, and I'm just sweat dripping, awful, miserable, and Marcus literally goes and hikes a mountain and comes back down like an hour later. He's I love him. For me, I'm actually, when does this come out? Is this like a Friday?
Gonna drop probably Friday night American, maybe Saturday at the latest.
Okay.
Friday night American.
I am launching a side project I've been working on for several months now. I was planning to launch it in the wintertime. It's called Viewport Inside Looks at Game Development, and it's a video game documentary channel. Gonna try the whole Patreon thing and see if I can make something happen. I've actually already filmed one of the documentaries. My original plan was to have a bank and like slowly put them out, like just as a side project. Now everything's kind of moved up. I double checked with the developers to see if they were cool with me saying it, but I'm actually this is already planned, but in a week and a half I'm going to Seattle and doing a documentary on the making of Another Crab's Treasure with that crew.
Cool.
So Yeah,
Nice.
that's my
Those
current
boys,
plan.
They're good chat, those boys.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm maybe gonna do like some consulting, or I don't know. I'm also, I was talking to my therapist today about this. I was like, I'm just gonna remain open. If I do this project for a few months and it goes really well, we'll take it from there. If it flops, I'm open to, just getting a normal job. Like I'm just kind of, it's a lot of this is very sudden, and so I'm just kind of gonna roll and try to do my thing.
And it's called Viewport, you said?
Yeah, Viewport.
Cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, so I have been hosting a podcast called All Things Nintendo for a few years now, and I recently took it independent, thank God. So back in April, I took it independent, and so therefore I have retained access to it. As we're recording this today, I have launched paid Patreon tiers for that. The podcast itself is still going to remain free as it has been, but the $5 tier gives you like ad-free episodes, early access to episodes. Just basically as soon as I edit them, they're going to get those episodes, and then access to a community Discord, and then the $10 tier gets an extra podcast as well, just like kind of industry wide, not just Nintendo focused as like the main podcast is. So yeah, that's like kind of like the thing I'm mainly focused on. And then outside of that, just kind of freelance, working with like companies on various ventures. It's only as we're recording this, it's only the second business day since the news broke. So like the dust is still kind of settling, but I have reached out to several of my contacts to see like what opportunities are out there. And I have a little bit of time that I can breathe, hopefully. Because I think that this is something that I posted on my Instagram story and not really anywhere else, but like being so short-staffed for 5 years, I didn't realize just how burnt out I was. So I am giving myself a little bit of time to just kind of decompress and breathe a little bit before like I jump right back in. But that said, I am actively looking for opportunities, and we'll see where that lands me.
It's good that you're decompressing and you have me texting you like, dude, come on the podcast. What are you doing? Wake up.
Yeah. No joke. I had so many notifications on Twitter, like after the news broke, that like it crashed my app every time I tried to open it. I had to like go onto the web version and like clear the notifications before I could open the app.
You guys have a lot of fans. Is there anything else any of you would want to get off your chest before we wrap things up?
I do. I just want to say, there's, I was gonna say a lot of us. There's only 13 of us total, but like the editorial folks, like we have some sort of online presence, right? For the most part, a lot of our back end team do not, and they are the backbone of Game Informer. And there's like screenshots going around out there of like our masthead that has those people's names, and I really would urge media outlets, publications, or game companies, if you need, web programmers, graphic designers, operations folks, like go and look at those names. There's literally, there's only 6 or 7 of them, so it's not like an exhaustive list. So, go find those people, and I'd love for them to kind of be highlighted in that way.
Well said.
I guess in terms of adding the GI's memory, I would like, I can't stress enough how much of a family it felt like. You hear that a lot with a lot of jobs, like a boss would be like, it's family here. And then at least for me, I've always rolled my eyes at that. I'm like, all right, buddy, it's a job. Like, you're not my dad.
It's usually a way for them to be like, hey, we're family, so we can like guilt you into working like overtime without charging us for overtime.
Exactly. Get some pizza.
Exactly. Oh, if they say you're my family, I can say no, because that's what I say to my family. But in this case, this was the first job I ever felt that was true. I felt it even back when I was a Game Informer intern in 2015, when it was, the full staff. I felt it there, and I felt it here, where everyone truly cared about what they were doing. I really can't stress that enough. I guess you would have to for us to have put up with as much as we did. But everyone always had each other's backs. Everyone was always supportive of each other, even now, as we sort of figure out this next chapter of our lives. And I think that is maybe more so than just the talent involved. maybe the biggest reason why Game Informer was as successful for as long as it was, is that, you know, we lifted each other up constantly, and that is incredibly important for any workplace or any venture. So that's the thing I'm gonna miss the most about
Me too.
working there.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're making me tearing up. Yeah.
You know, I'm just eternally grateful that I had the chance to do this for as long as I did. You know, I closed in on a decade, and yeah, I mean, it was just something that I grew up reading EGM, GamePro, Nintendo Power, and Game Informer, and I kind of prided myself in the fact that, like, you know, as sad as I was that all of those other, or many of those other outlets were gone, like Game Informer was still alive and kicking even 33 years later. And it's just very sad that it's no longer going to be around. But like, you know, to have even played like a small part of the history of one of my favorite publications to ever exist is humbling, and also just kind of still like pinch me, I'm dreaming, in that, like, I still can't believe that, like, you know, I got to do all the stuff that I did. I mean, all of us got to, you know, meet up with some of the most renowned game developers of all time, play games before they were either announced or before they were released at the very least, and, you know, travel the world to visit game studios. And it's not something I ever took for granted. And I think that's why it kind of hurts so much, but it's also like, because I never took it for granted, it doesn't really feel like the rug was as pulled out from under me as I think it could have, because I always kind of had in the back of my mind, like, this is so cool. I know it might not last forever. And you know, it didn't last forever, but the memories I made with, you know, Marcus and Alex and the rest of the staff absolutely will. Like, these are things that, this is an era I will always look back on fondly, and I'm grateful for the time that we did have putting out this magazine and maintaining this website and releasing this podcast together.
Yeah.
I have personally met so many great people and industry legends that have former Game Informer in their bio, and you guys are no different.
Well,
you're
Jake,
all fantastic.
Yeah.
Really
So,
nice.
thank you for coming to talk to us. I know, like you said, the dust hasn't even settled, but we really appreciate it, and we wish you guys the best. You'll be on the pod again, so we'll talk to you soon.
Definitely.
Thanks, y'all.
thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Always very excited to talk about our next sponsor, AG1. We've been partnered with them for a little while now. They actually sent us some samples earlier on before we really knew what it was. And we're like, all right, we'll check it out. Just you know, whatever. And we ended up loving it. And ever since then, we've all been drinking AG1 on the regular. Basically, it's a supplement that, you know, you drink, and it basically gives you a bunch of the sort of vitamins and minerals that you need throughout the course of your day. Instead of having to eat lettuce farm worth of different greens and measure stuff out, whatever, just drink this thing, and it's going to contain the stuff that you need to know that you've started your day right. You can like do one good thing for your body so that the rest of the day you can spend, you know, like playing video games and eating burritos.
And the benefits are great, you know, gut health, stuff like that. But energy is a big, important aspect of it. 90% of people in a study felt more energetic after
97, Jake.
97.
What did I said 97, didn't I?
You said 90.
You said 90. It's 97% of people.
97. It's even crazier. Yeah, 97% of people in a study felt more energetic after just 30 days of AG1. And energy is super important to me. I need it. I barely have it, and AG1 does help.
They also said that 91% of people they surveyed found they needed less coffee throughout the day after, you know, drinking AG1, because obviously they had more natural energy, and a lot of that has to do with like gut health. And they actually say it here as well that you know, 70% of your immune system lives in your gut. So if you've got good, you know, good stuff happening down there, it obviously makes you feel better overall. So yeah, we've been very happy with it. There's like different options in terms of what you can get. There's little travel sachets that you can grab as well. But it really is just like a nice way to start your day, knowing that you have done something good for your body. It does give you more energy, And yeah, we're fans. So if you would like to check it out for yourself, we do have a deal going. Thanks on the channel. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/friends. That's drinkag1.com/friends. Thank you very much to AG1 for sponsoring the video, and check it out.
Thank you both for joining us. We're all coming from different time zones, I feel like.
No. We're actually, Bids is in Vegas, aka Brisbane. So that was quite a surprise to learn that. So,
what did you just call it? Why is it called that?
Vegas, okay? Because if you've been to Brisbane, you know what I'm talking about, okay? Australians in the chat will get it. You're originally from the UK, Bids?
Yeah, from Cheshire originally.
Okay,
So,
right.
From a really tiny town called Middlewich that like you just don't want to go and visit. It's not worth it.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved to London, so I consider myself from London, really.
Right, okay. And how are you enjoying the transition? Or because you've been there for 5 years, you told us before we started recording. How do you like Brisbane now? You a fan?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
I've been coming here for years because my wife's Australian, so it's like probably like 25 years that I've been coming over and like slowly got used to it, got to know it, and now I'm living here. It's great. It's like really, space, the environment, everything's like more chill,
Except for the temperature.
Yeah, it's winter right now, isn't it? It's lovely. It's like 20 degrees. It's better than London summer, really. It's just nice, chilled.
Yeah, sure. That's true. Actually, that 20 degrees, by the way, is like t-shirt weather still, and that's a Brisbane winter. So just to give you some context of what we're talking about here. So yeah.
All right. So I think where I want to start with this, James, you working with Game Freak, working on Pokemon, and then Bids, you being the creative director for Swords of Ditto, very different sectors. How did you guys originally meet before even starting this venture?
Well, it was a long time ago. I think it was both of our first jobs in the industry when we were young and still full of optimism and naive, innocent boys. It was in London, actually. Our first games company was a company called Blue 52. And Bids got there a little bit earlier than me, I think. I joined maybe about half a year after you joined Bids. Is that right? Something like that.
That's about right, yeah.
Yeah. And we were both working on... I think it was Jim Henson's Storyteller was the first game that we were working on, which was a cool project because, I love Storyteller. It's cool. And we were doing it for like PlayStation 1, I think it was.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, like trying to squeeze some performance out of this really. It was just at the transition between PS1 and PS2. Right. So we were really trying to squeeze some performance out of that. And yeah, we were working on the same project, and then we really liked how each other worked, and we kind of wanted to work on an original project together. And we kind of circled around doing that. We never quite got an original project off the ground. And then it turns out that we went our separate ways, but we always kind of stayed in touch. We were really good friends, have been good friends ever since then, and always wanted to actually finally make that original game together.
That's cool. And so obviously you did go off and do different things. So Biz, you went off and had your own sort of like indie publishing thing, right? You did you form a publisher? Is that what you did? Like you published 1 or 2 games or something?
It's kind of long, complex story. It's something that the whole thing's been kind of chaotic, and it's just surviving, basically doing what was in front of me. I was at Blue 52. I stayed until it closed. That was 5 years, and we did a game there called Stolen for PS2, and then that closed, and we had nothing to do, so we started this company called Curve, and we were doing it was literally we had nothing to do, no job to go to, so we all got together and we got like a small deal. Do you remember those joystick games that you get in supermarkets? You plug them in directly into your TV and they're games.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, we'll just do this for a bit. They're each of them was 3 months. They had some 2D games in. We'll just do that for a bit until we find jobs, right? And then that turned into 5 of those, which then turned into us talking to Sony, and we started to do Buzz. If you know Buzz, the stuff that was a PS2 with the quiz games.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, we did the PSP versions of those.
I didn't even know they were PSP.
It got bigger and bigger, and I pitched a game to Nintendo called Fluidity, and Hydroventure, and then that got signed, and we did a first party game with Nintendo. The thing with Sony took off more. Then I started doing original things. I did a game called Stealth Bastard in my spare time, if you remember Stealth Bastard. So they're kind of, it's a game that doesn't take itself very seriously. It's a 2D stealth game, kind of Metal Gear Solid meets Super Meat Boy, I guess.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so I did that in Game Maker on my own, and then that became something that did quite well, and that ended up on 7 platforms as well. But during that period, things were going like pretty tough in the UK games industry. So we had to basically close down a lot of development because it was getting too expensive to do development. And what we started doing is we started to talk to a lot of the indie developers in the UK, like Thomas Was Alone's developer, Mike Bithell, Lone Survivor. All these are the games that they were good on PC, doing well on PC, on Steam, but they had no way to get onto console. And so it was a big time for like PS3 and PS Vita. We do a lot of ports for them. So we started that rolling, and we did probably 7 or 8, and then really we didn't ever go back to development. And at that point, I was like, well, I'm a games developer, I'm not a games publisher. So I left and formed my own company, which is One Bit Beyond. And then I made Swords of Ditto there.
Right.
Because I knew people at Devolver, they're like old friends, I guess, but having been in the industry for so long. Like at the time, it was 15 years. It's 9 years ago now, so like a long time.
That was like gathering of developers before that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Gamecock, if you remember Gamecock.
No, I don't remember that. No. Gamecock?
Yeah, Gamecock.
Okay, all right. Well, that would have had to have been rebranded if that survived.
So like, it's funny. One of the people who's like, I think he's head of production, I'm not sure, Andrew Parsons. He used to work for me at Curve as one of my level designers on Fluidity for Nintendo, like on a 3DS version we made.
Sure.
So then he left and he joined Devolver, and then later on I came to them. I was like, I've got this idea, and then that was that. Obviously, with that relationship with Devolver, that's something that we just maintain. Love working on them. Love working on the game with them, and it just kind of kept going. So when Jamie and I got together, like I was like, well, I've got this relationship. Like, this is something, these people good to work with. Worked with a lot of people in the past, so I know when people aren't good to work with. So yeah, that's kind of where that came from, really, and we kind of went from there.
And while all of that was happening with your career, you were having a very different career, James, because you were in Japan and you were working for a little company called Game Freak, making a very niche title that most people haven't heard of called Pokemon. So tell us, what was the deal with that, and how did that happen, and what was that like? What was it like working at Game Freak?
Yeah, well, that was essentially a holiday that just didn't end.
Wow.
I was working in Blue 52, and I went on holiday to Japan, and I had a friend in Japan, a Japanese guy called Shinsaku, who said, while you're over here, like he knew like the kind of work I did. Why don't we just send your resume and your portfolio out to different developers, see if anyone is interested? And so we did that. And then there was a company called Genius Sonority who were just starting development on like the first Pokemon game for the GameCube called Pokemon Colosseum. And they were looking for like developers and artists to help them out with that. And they saw my portfolio and they liked what they saw. And so I ended up having an interview, and I didn't speak Japanese at the time. So it's kind of difficult. It was a tricky interview to get through, but I think artists have an advantage in that our work can kind of speak for itself. And so they really liked that. And they offered me the job. And then like the month after I came back, that was it. I was off to Japan. And then I worked on Pokemon Colosseum. And then after that, it was Pokemon XD, Pokemon Troze, lots of Pokemon games. And then Game Freak saw my work in Genius Sonority, and they liked it. And so I had an interview with them. And then that's how I got working in Game Freak. And then from then on, it was like I made a lot of mainstream, the main series Pokemon games. I started off on Black and White, then like X and Y, Sun and Moon. I was designing Pokemon, doing lots of different things, actually. I did effects and managed the cutscene production, designed Pokemon themselves, and eventually I became art director of Pokemon Sword and Shield. But while I was doing this, I was also occasionally directing original games within Game Freak, which was fun. One really cool thing about Game Freak is they still have it's in the name, they're Game Freaks. They love games, and so they still have a passion to make original games. So they have this process where you can pitch original games, and then if they like them, you can make them. So I made a game for Nintendo called Harmonite, and another game for Sega called Tembo the Badass Elephant, believe it or not.
Great name.
I remember that. That was fun. That was a good one.
Oh, you liked it? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that. Yeah, so I made those for Game Freak, and yeah, it was just a great time. I loved working in Japan. I loved working with Game Freak, and lots of friends still there, still in contact with them. But yeah, it felt like a good time for a new adventure, and Bids and I had always talked like for decades, like about making something new together. Like our skills complement each other well. Bids is like more on the design side and the technical side of things. I'm more on kind of like the world setting and art, that kind of thing. And so like our combination of our skills combined, we thought we could potentially make something worthwhile. And so that's we always kind of talked about it throughout the years, and then finally seemed like the right time to get together and form a studio. So that's what we did.
So what made it the Plucky Squire? What kicked that off? From some research I saw, like the character designs had already existed. What really was like the kernel for like, all right, let's go for this idea?
Well, we've been developing a different idea actually that we're still quite excited about it, but it was like a 3D combat game, kind of a science fiction 3D combat game, but we were kind of pitching it a little bit, and it wasn't really igniting the kind of spark we'd hoped that it would. And so we started thinking about like an idea that would capture people's imaginations a bit more. And I had been drawing in this very simple kind of style on social media, like a webcomic called Cosmic that had these characters. And I was trying to think of like a game that would suit that visual style, that very simple kind of visual style. And I'd always loved like simple kids books from childhood. Like there was a series called Meg and Mog with like a witch and her cat that had very simple artwork. And then there's like Miffy or Mr. Men, very bold outlines. So I was thinking, well, this style, that would be interesting in a kid's book. And I haven't seen many games based on like a kid's book. And if you had a hero running around inside a book, that could present all kinds of interesting gameplay possibilities. And it has a kind of nostalgic feeling because it's like a book from your childhood. And so Bids and I, we were kind of casting around for ideas at this point because we weren't quite getting the kind of traction we hoped for. So we talked about ideas, and I brought up this idea of storybook, I think was what we were calling it. And yeah, Bids was really excited about it. And we kind of brainstormed a bit. And the idea of like jumping out of the book, because we'd been working in 3D for this combat game. So we had all this kind of 3D knowledge and know-how that we built up over the last couple of months. And so we were thinking, well, if the character jumped out of the book and we were using Unreal Engine, maybe we could have this character run around on the desk and like interact with stuff on the desk. And immediately that sounded like a really exciting idea. And I think it was like the next day that Bids like got into it. He like opened up Unreal, started thinking about like how we could actually pull this off. So yeah, that was really the kind of the genesis of the idea. I just took the characters from that webcomic because I quite liked them, and that hero character became Jot, who's the hero of the Plucky Squire, and the wizard became Moonbid, who's Jot's mentor in the game.
Yeah, and it also, because I remember you and I spoke when we were at Summer Games Fest, and you told me the story of how you managed to get Devolver on board with this, and seems like a pretty quick process compared to the story that most other developers are going through right now when it comes to getting a green light. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I think one thing is that Devolver trusts the people. It's a combination of the idea and the people, and they had such a good relationship with Bids and working with him that I think that's a really strong point in our favor. And I think that really helped a lot. And then I think just the fact that it's a good idea, like it's an idea that
it is
kind of sells itself. And so that's one piece of advice for anybody, from my point of view, anybody trying to make something new or original. Like a good idea will go such a long way pushing your thing further towards reality. So that's how I took it. I don't know, Bids, what you thought got us kicked off.
Yeah, so what Jamie was talking about with the 3D action game, we took that to Devolver, and because there's like quite an easy relationship, quite an honest relationship, we just kind of put it in front of them and we talked about it, and it was just like, just don't like it really. It's okay,
right?
You know, it's like just really honest. And then it's the same when we came back with something that, you know, was clearly like everyone who hears the idea, there's like a thing goes off in their head, like, wow, that's great. And it was the same with them. We're like, you know, we're working on this thing. We showed them really basic stuff with this character walking around the book, and then kind of a stick figure leaving and being like this plastic guy walking around the desk and then getting back in. And that was it. They were like, yeah, this looks like it can go somewhere. Jamie did a great document kind of explaining, you know, what it could look like, where it could go. But it's that magic that's kind of propelled us ever since then, really. Like, it's something that people latch onto, and it's almost like there's an imagination to it that like it feeds off itself. Everyone can kind of see it going in different directions. They put their own spin on it. Like Jamie was saying about nostalgia, there's this certain kind of like memory of childhood, and people kind of latch onto that, and they see this game in their head. They see the kid's desk as their own desk, you know. And so like people, like they really warm to it. And it was the same with Devolver, really. Like we put that in front of them and they're like, yeah, we like this idea. And so they gave us some money to do what they call a vertical slice, which is basically to take all of the game's design, everything, make all of the game, but just like a little bit of it. So do all the hard work, but only show a tiny bit. And that's what we did over the course of, I want to say, it was a bit less than a year, wasn't it? Like
A year to make a vertical slice.
Yeah.
Is that normal, or is that like is that long? Is that short?
It feels pretty long, I think. But we're only a tiny team.
Okay.
And you know, we were going at that point anyway. And I think the vertical slice actually was a bit smaller, but we were already up and running. So we had like, you know, the stuff rendering onto the book with the pages turning, and you could kind of walk in and out. We had a 3D character, and it all started to just the thing with Plucky Squire. It's like a series of fortunate events almost. Like the idea itself was like, wow, where did that come from? And then it was like, well, let's try it. Let's put the characters onto the page. Let's see if we can do that. So, oh, look, we can. That's cool. So let's see if we can turn the pages. Yeah, that works. Every single one of those steps along the way was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. That worked. At any point, we could have just gone, oh, shit, that didn't work. And then we'd have to go and do something else. Because it's that kind of game where it relies on all of those things working. And any one of those would just break the chain a little bit. So, like I say, it's like a series of lucky events in a way that this worked out. And we managed to get pages turning, walking from thing, getting out, going onto mugs, walking around the desk, and it all just kind of flowed. And it was really like pushing a boulder downhill. It's just like once it was moving, we were just trying to get things out of its way, trying not to stop it really. You know, and this demo that we made, like, yeah, it's really good. Everyone who played it saw it. It went really well.
That was the vertical slice, you mean?
Yeah,
right. Yeah, because I mean, I played it at Summer Games Fest for like an hour, right? It was like an hour session we had, right, James?
Yeah, that's right.
And I was blown away by it, you know, because I feel like, I think what's going to surprise people about this is that there's a clear gimmick, and you're like, oh, cool, that's cute. And you're like, oh, I'll probably play through that for, you know, 3 or 4 hours, and it's all about the gimmick, and it looks really cute and nice, and I'll, you know, post some pictures on social and I'm done, right? But I was actually I was blown away by how playable it was. You know, for example, like, you know, the puzzles that that you've sort of built into this 2D and 3D thing going back and forth between the two of them and how that works is fantastic. The core combat feels really great. Like it has, the way you're able to throw out your weapon and recall it, you choose when it comes back, feels really good. Plus, you've got all those additional little mini games, and there's like a lot of those, and you've got literally Resogun going on in there, like just straight up Resogun. So I was really impressed by the scope of it from a design perspective, and it really did exceed all my expectations. How did you arrive at that point where you just sort of kept adding more stuff? Because I feel like this is the kind of thing where you could have just stopped a lot earlier and be like, well, we've got a cool little idea. Let's just do that and spit it out for 4 hours and call it a day. Like, how was that process where you just kept piling on more things? How did you get to that? You're like, is that regret in your eyes? You're like, oh, damn, I really wish we hadn't done that,
Well, it's funny, right? Like, this whole game is, like I mentioned, it's like rolling downhill, and we're just constantly grabbing things that we love and shoving it in. It's just like this canvas that we can do stuff with, and so like all these wild ideas will come up, and like Jamie and we've made a lot of games before, and like we know we have like a lot of it. It's like intrinsic and is now built in. A lot of the stuff that you're seeing, like for example the combat system, I've done that before, which is why it's now much more mature than it used to be. I made my mistakes in the past, and now it's a lot better. But it's very similar with lots of the games that we're making, and so we're throwing this stuff in, and we know very quickly, like, let's make this shooting game around the tub. Like I've done very similar stuff, so it comes together quite quickly. It's not really it's never really a no. It's like, let's just try this. Sure. We never really actually went down any wrong routes. One of the things about the game, right?
So many game developers are so pissed off listening to this. You're like, just have a great idea, just go to a publisher and get greenlit on the spot. Yeah. Just don't run into any roadblocks as you go, and it's fine.
Yeah. Must be nice.
Must be nice.
Easy peasy. Yeah. I think we also kind of hold ourselves to quite high standards as hopefully as high as we can. Like, is this 5 minutes of the game worth the player's time? Like, if anything feels undercooked, or like, well, this is kind of just a repeat of what we were doing before, this is wasting the player's time, it's like unclear, then we just want to get rid of that and make sure that every step of the way something entertaining is happening, we're not like confusing the player. There's always something kind of fresh to do. That's one of the core concepts of the game, like keeping it fresh and keep surprising the player with new kind of gameplay styles. But at the same time, we're not the kind of people that can sketch out an idea, put it in, and just leave it at that. Like it has to feel right. And so we spend a lot of time on each of these little mini games or these little sections of gameplay, like iterating and iterating. I think Bungie spent a lot of time on the Resotub mini game, just making sure that it's not a long section of gameplay, but it has to feel good. It has to control well. The player has to have good feedback when they're playing it. And so it's just trying to keep to those standards and like keeping the whole thing entertaining the whole way through.
Yeah. Well, I was very entertained when I played for an hour, that's for sure. So, what's the runtime on it, by the way? How long do you reckon this is, start to finish?
We kind of planned for a 3 to 5 hour game. We're like, let's just make it short, sweet. No one will get tired of it. It comes and goes, and it's brilliant. And it didn't really work out that way. I think we're kind of like 10 to 12 now.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, like
a lot longer than I thought.
When I play through it takes me a whole day. Okay. I know what I'm doing. I know all the solutions to the puzzle. I never die, all that stuff. So it's like an 6 to 8 hour game for me. So it's reasonable. It's reasonably chunky. Yeah. And we've managed to keep up this kind of element of surprise all the way through. Like the thing that you played at the Summer Game Fest, that's Desk 6. Right. It's not really like the other bits of the game. Okay. It's really quite varied,
Yeah. Well, I'm so going, Jake.
I was going to say, you guys don't currently have a release date, but it feels like you're getting towards the finish line. So for a game of this size, what does that look like? Like, what are you guys doing to get this to the finish line? How's it going?
Personally, I'm constantly tearing my hair out and putting fires out.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's it's a complex game, right? Because there's lots of games within games, and we have so many things that work together. There's a lot to kind of keep in your head at the same time. Like the fact that you can move from 3D to 2D in all these different locations and play different kinds of games, and it's all got to work together seamlessly. You know, we're trying to make something that's like a Nintendo game, really. Like Jamie and I we both make games for Nintendo, and that's our genre, that's what we love. And so we want to put that into this game. And that's kind of where we are right now. It's done, it's finished. It's like all those edges that transform it from being something that is good into something that's worthy of that standard. That's what we're trying to do. It's a bit more difficult with a small indie team, obviously, so it's challenging. But right now we're putting the kind of finishes to it and making it shine a little bit.
Yeah.
Really close to it.
Yeah, it's coming this year, like a bit later this year.
Right.
And so we're really in that kind of final polishing phase and like fixing the bugs, playing through. I'm spending a lot of time playing through the game with my iPad next to me and writing up like notes. And then it always takes a long time to process those notes. We've got like different systems of like bug fixing databases and stuff like that. And so it's a lot of, finding like all those tiny flaws and then kind of dispersing those out to different people, getting people kind of working to a schedule, just tying all the loose ends together, really.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be rad. That's my prediction. Having played it, seen it, spoken to you guys, very excited for it. Truly, it's from the moment, and I think the moment everyone saw this, they're like, "Shit, I want to play that." You know what I mean? And I think that when people play it for themselves, they're going to be very pleasantly surprised by just, how good it feels to play it, how much there is. Like, it was really, that's the part that really shocked me as I got hands on it myself. So, really excited for that, and really wish you guys the absolute best for this home stretch. Definitely cheering for you, and hope we can chat again in the future when you're on the other side of it.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your interest and like for the kind words about the game. It's good to hear. It's cool.
For sure.
Of course.
All the best. Thank you again.
James Bids. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Next up, we got another user question. This one comes from that good old-fashioned email that I can't remember. It's
I saw you look away.
contact@friendspersecond.com. You thought I was going to just rattle that off? Nope, not when you have an overfull hard drive like me. This is from Lucas from Brisbane, who says, "Hello, beautiful peeps. I have been watching a lot of videos on people's views of Shadow of the Erdtree, and a lot of them end with them wondering what is next for FromSoft. Many say going back to a linear Dark Souls style. I actually think going to a different genre would be great, and it got me thinking of developers that have jumped to a different genre not in their wheelhouse. Remedy doing survival horror with Alan Wake 2, Guerrilla leaving shooters for, the action open world of Horizon. Is there a studio you would like to see tackle a genre out of their norm?"
That's a tough question.
That's a fun
Yeah,
one.
I don't know.
The one I am interested to see that is happening is Playground, the people who worked on the Forza Horizon series, doing a Fable game. That is a weird jump, but in a weird way, when it was announced, I was like, okay, I could see something there. Maybe there's some like DNA there for something interesting.
Well, I was gonna say, I also wonder, like, the UK games industry is not that big, and I do wonder how many people from Lionhead have found their way to Playground.
True.
But it's a good point, because it is, very different for cars.
I am not necessarily excited about developers making total genre jumps, right? As in, if you were to say to me that Bungie is now making a third-person melee action game, I'd be like, oh, okay, fair enough, that's fine. But that's not what they're historically good at. Like, they've developed, 30 plus years of experience in making shooters, right? So what I'm actually interested in is when those developers take that core skill set and apply it to a bit of a genre remix or a bit of a genre shift. So, like, again, like Marathon is an example with Bungie, where they're going to make an extraction shooter. And it's like, okay, not everyone loves the idea of extraction shooters. Fair enough, I get it. But Bungie make the best shooters on the market in terms of how they feel. And if you could bring that feel to an extraction shooter, I'd be really interested to see what that is. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, that's where I'm at with that. Again, I'm like, can you shift into different spaces using that core skill set? Like great storytellers, when they start shifting into different types of stories, that really interests me. Whereas if I heard like a story, like a studio that's really specialized in telling great stories, and now all of a sudden they're making, I don't know, some roguelike deck builder thing, I'm like, okay, fair enough. But I really want you to tell stories because I know you can do that well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, because the thing, like the Remedy call out's interesting because I think there've always been pieces of survival horror throughout all their games,
I think that's
and then they just hone in on it. But what I do like is when there is something unexpected in a game. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, all the devs were really excited about Queen's Blood, and they just made this really compelling mini game that they are now. I think I read somewhere that they're going to put it in the third part. When we were talking to the director when he came into GameSpot, he was like, oh yeah, people at work loved it so much that they 3D printed it and they play it IRL, like with cards and stuff. And so I love stuff like that where there are still avenues to try stuff, but within a well-known formula. Sorry, a baby is crying, and that's really weird because I don't live near any children.
Maybe someone left a present for you at the door.
Oh no!
Congratulations.
I think of things like Housemarque with Returnal. Their games before Returnal were shmups, but then they moved it to telling some stories, structuring it differently, and then of course it being in third person. But then it was too hard and I didn't like it. But I like that. So I'm like now after Returnal, I'm like, okay, are they going to continue that? How are they going to evolve from there? You know, is it going to be another third person shmup but with a different spin, or are they going to jump to a completely different presentation style again, a different structure? That stuff is exciting. On the flip side, I do want to give a shout out to Strange Scaffold, who they've got their vibe down, and then all of their games are kind of different. And I really like that. I really like that vibe being carried from thing to thing. Click holding most recently. I Am Your Beast, that demo I talked about a couple weeks back. Of course, El Paso Elsewhere. Like it's always got a different gameplay style, you know, so to speak, but that feeling is consistent, and I think that's a fun through line.
That's all I got.
Yeah, that's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. All right, let's move on. We are going to jump over to what we've been playing. And Ralph, holy shit, I do want to start with you because you wrote down just 5 minutes ago while I was speaking, Space Marine 2.
Yeah, man. I played so much Space Marine this week. So, first of all, important caveat.
Yeah.
The preview build they gave us was to demonstrate the multiplayer co-op stuff.
Okay.
The multiplayer co-op stuff does not work.
Great.
Oh.
In this build.
Oh.
I tried for over an hour to try and get it working, and it did not work. And it's like this build had literally one job, and it didn't do that. So
unfortunate.
That's very concerning. Well, it is concerning, and also it's like, you know, they've also just cancelled a multiplayer beta they had planned prior to release. And they said, hey, we need the time to focus on making the best thing we could make. And it's like, well, beta's what you do to do that. So, okay. So that's not good. And I think all of that but I've seen stuff like this in the past. This is not like a unique situation. Like I have seen multiplayer like builds in the past for preview slices where it just doesn't work for whatever reason. And then it ends up being fine at release. But I have seen it go the other way as well, for sure, right? So, as I said in my preview, bottom line is, don't pre-order, okay? Don't panic yet, but definitely don't pre-order. We need to make sure this stuff works, and right now I don't have confidence that it works.
Okay.
All of that aside, let's pretend as though that does work, okay? Let's pretend that works as intended at launch. This is going to be fucking incredible, Space Marine 2. Like, it's going to be so good. I cannot believe, like, because I played it before last year. I played one mission or whatever, and I was like, damn, man, they really nailed this. But even then, I wasn't ready for just how impressive it was, seeing how much further it's come since then. The visuals in this game are unbelievable. Like, this is easily the best looking Warhammer game ever made, above Darktide, which already looked incredible.
Wow.
the storytelling that I played through one campaign mission, and the storytelling in this one campaign mission was so dense and so well written. It was fantastic, and it had like more story in one campaign mission than Darktide did during its entire campaign. Do you know what I mean? But it wasn't just like the quantity of it. It really did feel very taught in its writing. You know, it really understood the source material. It knew how to convey terms without over explaining things. It knew how to pull you into this world. You know, you don't need to understand Warhammer to be able to get into this.
Okay, good.
Like you could just jump in and be like, okay, I get the vibe here. I'm with it. The action is fantastic. Like the number of weapons, the number of enemies you're fighting, just the horde technology that they've got going, and how many units can be on screen at once as they kind of stream towards you is this river of, oh my God. When you're standing there and you press a button and like, okay, here comes the attack. And you're just like looking down this bridge, for example. And it's a big ass bridge far away. And it just slowly starts filling up with Tyranid enemies. By the end, that entire bridge is full of Tyranids. And they are all coming at you. And you have to kill all of them because they're all real units. They're not like just some fucking skybox placeholder bullshit.
Okay.
They're real things that you're going to have to kill. And the engine can support that. The feeling is just, it's so good. It's just, you really feel like such a badass. Oh man, it's okay. And this is the other thing, by the way. I really thought this was just a campaign of like 12-ish missions plus some 6v6 multiplayer PvP. Okay. Turns out, this is kind of positioning itself, in addition to all of that, it's also positioning itself as like a co-op shooter. Think Left 4 Dead kind of thing with progression and what have you. So there are campaign missions. Sorry, there are PvE co-op missions. There are 6 different classes you can choose from. Each class has its own progression tree. Each weapon has its own different rarity tiers, as well as like perk trees for each individual weapon. There are 4 different difficulties to play through all this content. And the intention is that you just play this to progress your characters and level them all up and play harder and harder difficulties and unlock everything as you go. And it becomes this platform that because I think there's 6 missions at the start, like it'll launch with 6 of these missions. But you could add to that over time. Like you could absolutely add a mission every couple of months, or I don't know how long it would take, whatever it is. But this is that scaffolding that you could eventually turn this into some live service if you wanted to. And I know everyone's like, live services suck. I agree that live services, when you launch them as live services, suck. But if you just launch good games that are complete and people want to play them,
players are hungry for more,
and players are hungry for more, and then you give them more, that's okay. Like that's how live services should be. And this feels like the scaffolding for that, you know? And so I had no idea that all that stuff was in there. I thought this was a game you play for 15 hours and you're done, unless you want to grind the PvP. Turns out this is a game I expect you'll be able to play for 50 to 60 hours with your mates while you unlock everything in this PvE, this co-op PvE mode. And yeah, dude, it's
great.
Good. It's really good shit.
That's
like
awesome.
I'm honestly blown away by how good it is.
Yeah, you addressed like that one. That was like my one concern with it, especially when they were being transparent about how long the campaign is. I was like,
yeah, okay,
but what else? What have you been? You know, what's gonna keep me?
Yeah,
that's great. I'm glad to hear that.
The runway for this is very long, you know, and I think I can't imagine they won't stick with this. I can't imagine they won't add more content over time. The customization as well, out of control.
Really?
There's so much shit to unlock. You can literally customize every single panel on the Space Marine. So you can make one arm like one color with one decal on it, another arm like a different color.
Oh man.
You know, there are all sorts of unlockable armors and trimmings and adornments, and there's so much shit. Warhammer people are going to lose their fucking minds. I don't know how much of that is going to be microtransactions, right?
Yeah.
Some of it already is. Like they've already listed that as DLC.
Okay.
So like, but again, if you're selling me a complete game on day one, fair enough. I don't necessarily love the idea that we're shipping day one with cosmetic stuff behind DLC paywalls, but it's pretty standard at this point, so I don't know. But it also relates to their long-term ambitions. If they do plan to continue making content for this game, and that DLC is going to fund that ongoing development, I think that's a fair deal. I've always said that, you know? But either way, there's enough customization you don't feel shortchanged without buying the DLC stuff. You're not going to feel ripped off by not buying that DLC. I customize a bunch of Space Marines, and they look great without having to have any of that DLC on my account. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I really think that this is like feeling, if it delivers, I feel like this could be like a Game of the Year contender. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be in that conversation for not necessarily top 1 or 2, but I feel like it could be in that top 5 to 10. You know, 5 to 10. It feels in that kind of space where you're just like, damn, super impressive.
Who's making it? Is it Fat Shark?
Saber.
Oh, Saber.
I say Fat Shark was Dark Tide.
That was it.
This is Saber, and like, you know, they're obviously, they're not on the map in a big sense.
Yeah.
You know, like, we know them. They're a support studio. They do a lot of ports. They've got a great reputation, what have you. This is absolutely going to put them on the map if this delivers. And they are next going to be making the Knights of the Old Republic remake. So the quality bar that they've hit with this, if they can deliver that with Knights of the Old Republic, that is going to be unbelievable. Yeah. Like, when you see and experience this game for yourself, and then you sort of transpose that onto Knights of the Old Republic, you're like, holy shit, man, that is going to be good. So yeah, very, 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 very impressed. It's out on September 9th. And I hope the multiplayer works. That's essentially where I'm at now. With
fingers crossed. Lucy, I want to ask you about Thank Goodness You're Here. This is a game you've been championing. I played through it. What did I just play?
I was gonna say in that case, I want to throw that back at you. What did you make of it as an American person?
It feels like it felt like British Simpsons, where it was just like a weird town with like a bunch of weird shit and goofy people. And it, for me, was just kind of like this fun little thing to play through for a couple of hours. You're just like this little shit. Everybody sucks. Everybody's telling you what to do. And I just kind of chuckled my way through it.
Polite,
a couple of belly
sensible
laughs.
chuckle.
But a lot of just chuckling my way through it. And then I was like, where is this going? What are we doing? And then I got to the end sequence and I was like, okay, wow. That was funny. That was good.
A lot of payoffs to a lot of the jokes that have been kind of woven through the whole game.
That was what I really liked. A lot of like follow up and like follow through with some of the weird little jokes and just like even offhanded remarks from some of the characters, and then going back and hearing them kind of continue whatever they were referencing later on. It was just like nicely put together, and how I naturally flowed through it. So it's like, essentially for people, it's like you walk around a town and you get little missions and you have to backtrack, go in here. You kind of just jump around, you do a little platforming, you punch stuff, you break stuff. You're just this little crummy guy.
Yeah, all you can do is jump and slap.
Yes.
That's it. It's a slap former.
And it very much, I was surprised how well it flowed. Where I was like, wait, what am I supposed to be doing right now? And then I just kind of wandered around for a couple of minutes, stumbled into it, wandered to the next thing. Like, I found it like paced and plotted out pretty well.
Because some of my favorite jokes are to do with getting from one area to the other, like the coming down the chimney.
that was
the poor guy.
My favorite part of the whole game was that guy. Absolutely. Yeah. So it has, now thinking back too, like it just has so many little things that like after I played it, I was like telling friends, I was like, there's this whole thing with this fucking guy. And then every time you do it, and then there's this weird like plumber who just yells at you and he has this like silly accent. And it's.
You mean the Scottish man?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like it was played up a little bit.
Any Scots listening, we apologize profusely. Please, was very sorry. He did not mean it. He does not understand.
Your Italian accent earlier sounded just like Mario.
Well, that's how my nonna sounded. So there you go.
No.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. The music, the presentation, the visuals, like they use different media, like they use film, like archival film stuff. I really like, and I also just like those English towns. Is that real? I've only seen them in movies. Like, does where Shaun of the Dead live? Is that like a real place?
That's a real place. That
seems like you guys got it figured out.
Well,
it's cool.
So this place is Barnsworth, so it's meant to be a spoof of Northern England, and so it's really funny because I was playing it with my friend Andrew, who is American, because I played it through myself, and then we played it through the weekend, and it's so weird looking at those northern towns because that is what it's the red brick, the way that the terrace houses. That's very, very familiar to where I grew up. And yeah, I've said this before, but it's really weird because I definitely feel some of those characters that obviously they are very bizarre and very over the top, but I definitely feel like I know someone who would do something similar or say something really weird, or I don't know, you kind of get the vibe or the measure of a person. I feel like a lot of the characters definitely embodied that. For me, I mean, as a British person who grew up in Newcastle, went to university in Leeds in Yorkshire, it made me weirdly homesick just because they just I know the Debs are from the north of England as well, but it's just perfectly captured the north of England, and it's really.
Do you mind if I ask,
really
what is it? Is it the look of the environments? Is it like the tone? Is it the specific dialect that people are speaking? Like why does it feel like it represents you in a way?
It's like it's the tone and the dialect. I mean, even some of when you're kind of around the market, like I remember going to the market when I was a kid, because my mum would take me to the office, and then every few days there'd be a market on in the middle of the high street. I don't know, it's just something that it's really difficult to put a finger on, because even there's like there's a travel agent shop or something, or there's a shop that's randomly called like Price Shaggers, which is great. And then when you find the rat version, it's called Mice Shaggers, which I really, again, another great joke. I don't know, it's just there's just something about it where I think it's the humor as well. I was trying to explain this. I was on Kind of Funny the other day, and I was trying to explain why the British are, well, I think we're very funny.
The way they are.
Yeah, and I feel like, we're this tiny island who, by doing a lot of bad shit,
where's she gonna go with this? I was thinking.
We carved a big place for ourselves in the world, and then we got rightfully put back in our place. And I think a way that the British people kind of deal with having to have the stiff upper lip, having to be seen as, the Queen is from there, decorum, whatever. British people are just really funny and really crude, and I love that that's not how the rest of the world necessarily sees us. And yeah, the humor is just dead on. I think I explained that poorly. I think I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know if I explained it.
I gotcha. No, I got you.
I got
One
you.
thing I did find that was interesting is how it kind of walks a line. It's not gross out humor. It's not always grotesque.
That hot dog thing,
but there's some things. There's some things that are like, whoa. It's a very interesting level of that grossness.
There is just, it's like again, I also don't want to over-explain some jokes, but the guy who's hiding out behind the fence and he keeps poking sausages through the fence.
Yeah, the little sausage glory hole.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say anything gross. He's just like, hello, here. I'm putting this through the hole.
Would you like a sausage? I think the milk thing is probably one of the weirdest. Greg, I think, tweeted out that one.
Yeah.
The milk shy no more, because every kind of big joke when it comes to an end, it has a little title card and all of the characters say it out loud.
Yeah,
which is great.
The pie gag. There's a gag with like the whole thing, and people have seen it in the trailer, like Big Ron's big pies. But then the other guy who
Tiny Tom's tiny pies
with the small pies, that whole sequence that just like randomly plays out and doesn't really go anywhere.
God.
Like I loved it.
Yeah, it's really funny, and I think, at least for me, there was always something in every scene like that. It didn't feel like it ever dragged for me, or that a joke didn't land. And I think, being from the north of England, maybe I've got a leg up when it comes to that. But I loved it. And I also think, I also said this on Kind of Funny, but it's like, in terms of navigating around it, it's very confident in like making you go from one place to another, making sure it's incentivizing you with new jokes and whatever. And and the music is great. I would love it to be on Spotify.
I love the idea that this is only 2 hours long.
Yeah. Super short.
I think it's cool because I've spoken to quite a few people about this game now, and everyone speaks about it with the same level of enthusiasm, and they're very excited to talk about it with others. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you can get that, and then but get that in 2 hours for a video game is so rare.
Yeah.
Like your average fucking JRPG the 2 hour mark is literally 20% of the tutorial introduction. Do you know what I mean? So this is cool, and I love it for that reason. And I have bought it, and I plan to check it out because I'm like, I got 2 hours, and instead of watching more episodes of The Sopranos again, I'll do this instead. You know what I mean? So it is actually on my list.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was gonna say good flight game probably.
Good on
too.
Steam.
That's it.
Deck.
I'll
That's what
probably
I did.
just do it on Steam Deck when I'm flying over to Germany. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we better swap stories about it over there. Maybe even during the live show.
Hey?
4 o'clock on Thursday at Gamescom. Be there or be square. And then when you arrive, we can say, thank goodness you're here. That's
Very
right.
good.
Boom.
That was
Very
good.
Wow.
Damn.
Wonderful.
Wow.
This man's
Where do
professional.
One thing I played briefly because I'm still playing through it. Played it on Steam Deck. Conscript. I don't know if you guys have
nice.
seen this. This is
Yes.
pretty cool. The
It's an
description
Australian
of
game. Australian game.
it. Shout out! It's like a very small team. I think it might be like
It's one dude.
one guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's one guy.
It's so the pitch on paper is like isometric, but like Resident Evil 1 survival horror style game, but it's just the horrors of World War One. It's just you in trenches, scrapping around with a few bullets and health kits with a couple of soldiers, and it totally delivers on that premise. It is very cool, very atmospheric. The sound design is really good. You're just walking around these miserable trenches. You hear cries, screams, gunfire in the distance, all in a very lo-fi thing. It's very pixelated. It's very like, you gotta like squint, like what's up with my guy? Like you have to really, but it's very simple. You know, you have limited ammunition. You have a shitty, slow melee weapon. It's just like a trenching shovel. It's about managing resources, solving puzzles, getting keys, and trying to get through these trenches. And it is very cool. There's a little bit of a story, a little bit of a through line to it. Presentationally, they do the occasional little drop of like a really ugly PS1 pre-rendered cutscene. Like little things here and there that just really, really work for me. But it's the shooting I really like. It is very clunky and weird, as it should be, to the point where like you have an enemy coming towards you and you hold left trigger to like, all right, aim your rifle, and he's like, ugh, and the reticle's like all over the place, and you have to wait so long for that reticle to shrink up, and then it's just one bang, like one crack of gunfire, and like you really hope you fucking hit that guy in the head because you're desperate. So it's really that idea of the desperation of like trench warfare works so well for this formula. It's not perfect. Like the melee is clunky, but to a point where it's not charming. It's kind of annoying. It's very dodge rolly.
Okay.
But I'm digging this. Like I'm only like 2 hours into it. But I think if you were like me and like you like read the description and you were like, that's kind of neat. I can confirm it is.
I have been tracking it for a long time. I discovered it, I don't know, maybe even 18 months ago, and did a put this on your radar shout out on my channel. Just the look of it was fantastic. You know, tracked it all the way through. It's like had a Steam demo, whatever, during Next Fest. Everything about it was just super positive, and yeah, really glad to see the kind of reception that it's been getting. Oh yeah, everyone seems to love it. You know, it really seems to nail it, and to think it came from one person. You know, and it's also not, interestingly, there's a few games that have done the World War I trenches thing. Like
Valiant Hearts.
Last little bit. Valiant Hearts, but there was also a survival horror game. What was it called? It was like last year. It was a good one. It was called.
What was it?
Wasn't it an Amnesia game? Was it?
Oh, it was at Amnesia the Bunker. Technically, that
yes, it was Amnesia
yeah.
the Bunker. Yeah, and it was literally just like that was like a more high production, like proper modern, you know, first person survival horror game set in the trenches. That was meant to be pretty good as well. Didn't play it, but this is just a different angle on that, and they both seem to be successful. So yeah, it looks great, and I'm really glad that it's landed so well.
Yeah, I agree. I really like that you also did the gamer equivalent to me of like, yeah, I saw that band back like when they were like, I saw them at a bar. They were really, years ago.
No, but I say that purely because sometimes you see a game jump out at you on social media. You're like, fuck, what the hell is that? You know
and then
what I mean?
that's it.
This was, this was one of those games that just immediately captured my attention. And then I started looking into it. I'm like, one person made this? They're Australian? World War I treasure, survival horror?
And it released and it's cool.
Yeah, like that's a cool story. So, yeah, that's really great. I'm really, yeah.
Lucy, what about you?
So I was sick coming back from Comic-Con. So I had a couple days off work and I played through a bunch of stuff. It was mostly like demos and stuff. So I played through Phoenix Springs demo, Spilled demo, but I played through The Operator, which is really fun. It's it's basically you're the man in the chair. You're at the FBI, and you are basically fielding phone calls from agents who are out in the field, and they'll send you photos, and it's up to you to scan the pictures and zoom and enhance, run license plates through the database, or if you get there's a chemical compound, we need you to send it to the lab, but then you're the lab. So it's these fun little kind of tactile I love like the clicking and dragging. It does the thing where every morning you have to log into your laptop and it's 90s, like the 90s feel of just typing away. And you also have to, when you're searching for people's names in the database, like you have to type out their full name. And I felt like I was in an early season of CSI.
That's cool.
And it was cool. And then there's a really fun little set piece that I don't want to spoil because it really surprised me, but I think there's different ways that it can play out, and you're not on the phone to someone, but you're like typing a response, like you can pick. So there's a kind of dialogue stuff in there too. It's a fun kind of conspiracy theory mystery. And I finished it in a couple of hours and I really enjoyed it. So my plan, that's the thing. So that's one of the games I played. My plan was to get through a bunch of other smaller demos. And then on the Tuesday, I made the mistake of playing SteamWorld Heist 2. And then I played it for 8 hours in one
As you do.
day. And
did you play the first one?
Nope.
Okay, you just
went straight in.
Just raw dog the sequel.
Yeah. And I that's the thing, because I know the first game because I interviewed the dev at Summer Game Fest, and I know because I was doing some research for that, I know that it has a 10 out of 10 on Steam, overwhelmingly positive. But I didn't really know if this would be my jam because it's like a 2D like turn-based. I was listening to the besties and they said 2D XCOM, which I think is probably the closest thing. But there's no percentage chance that you might hit something. It's all based on geometry and the lines that you make. So if you're a captain of a little scrappy submarine, and your mother is a famed pirate of the seas, and you're trying to live up to her legacy, which I really enjoy that. It's a little family drama, but it's up to you to recruit a bunch of scrappy pirates just like you. And there's a really fun job system where you can swap jobs at any time by giving your robot a different weapon, but they still retain some of the skills that they've learned from their previous job. So you can mix and match what their skills are in really, really fun ways. And it is so charming. The music is lovely. I'm finding myself going back every level to make sure I get all of the stars, because there's bounties that you can earn, and if you do all the bounties and kind of earn that sort of like renown as a currency, the bounty currency, you can really trade those in for some really great weapons and upgrades. And just everything about it just coalesces so nicely that I had such a lovely time with it. And I played a bunch of it yesterday as well. And yeah, I really didn't think it would be my jam, but here we are, and I'm going to put it on my Steam Deck for my flight tomorrow. Quite
I've only seen some footage of it. It looks great, like visually, it looks really nice. Yeah, it's so weird how the SteamWorld games are all like different genres. They're just like, we're gonna make a builder here, and we're gonna make a exploration game. This one's a turn-based strategy game, but whatever. It's all SteamWorld. It all works.
It's great.
But yeah, that's nice. That's very cool. What possessed you to play it? Like what?
They sent me a code.
But like, you get sent lots of codes.
I do.
But like, why this one is what I'm asking.
I think because I think if I hadn't been on that interview at Summer Game Fest, it wouldn't be on my radar at all. Because I've never played another SteamWorld game. Sure. And so I remembered that interview. I remembered in the research, people finding out that people really loved the first one. And I was like, hey, I'm going to broaden my horizons. And then bam, here we are. A tactical bitch.
Make a t-shirt of that, please. Tactical bitch.
Tactical bitch.
That's
no,
good.
So I had a lovely time with it. And yeah, I'm really glad I took a chance on it. I think I'm about halfway. No, I don't even think I am halfway through. I just got to another new area and everything's kind of switching up, and now there's a bunch of ice and stuff, which, you know, completely changes the way that I'm having to approach every encounter. And so everything I thought I knew has been thrown out of the window. My cat is going absolutely
the cat wild in the background
on this cat tree in the background. Yeah. But no, I've had a great time with it.
Just That's a well-seasoned gamer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, let's jump over to show and tell. This is the sequence where we bring something to the table that we've enjoyed over the last week or so that is not a video game.
That was a big stretch.
That was Ralph just did a big stretch on screen.
Big stretch.
I don't want to go first.
I will go first.
Okay.
I started watching Andor.
Oh, finally.
Andor
okay.
what?
Shut the fuck up! I started watching Andor. I had never seen it before. I'm halfway through it now.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And I'm halfway through it.
When
and
things change.
Legitimately cannot believe that they made a good Star Wars.
Oh.
Like, I can't believe it. I'm like blown away by how good this is. It's frustratingly bad. Because it's almost like, you mean you could have been doing this the whole time and you haven't been doing it? Fuck you. You know what I mean?
Why did they do that and then made Obi-Wan look like a sitcom show? Don't even get me started. I'm not allowed to talk about Star Wars on the internet. I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, I'll do the talking for us.
Okay.
But I would. But it honestly feels like Star Wars for adults. You know what I mean? It really feels like they are like, how about we write in a way that assumes that you've like. I don't know. I probably can't word it that way. That wouldn't be very good. But let's just say that it's pitched at an adult reading level in a way that I feel like a lot of Star Wars has not been pitched at an adult reading level for a long time. It's beautifully shot. The cinematography, the locations they chose, all the performances. It has Cousin Richie from The Bear in it. I didn't even know he was in it, by the way. Yeah. When he was in it, I'm like, oh my God. He's here. I love this dude.
And he's great.
He's so fantastic in it. Everyone is fantastic in it. Even Andor himself. Just like, he just...
Wait, Andor's a person? I thought it was a planet.
Andor's a person. Yeah, Andor's a person.
That's Andor.
No. That's Andor. That's right.
Oh, wait a minute. His name is so close. I never thought of that. That's so stupid. We have Andor. Why do we have Andor?
Andor. So it really is just... Honestly, halfway through it, I love it. I really, really love it a lot. Everything about it. You know what really I love the most, though? Okay, right? I'm not interested in lightsaber battles at this point in my life. I'm not, okay? People swinging swords and throwing shit. I was like, okay, whatever. But if you show me a group of Empire bureaucrats sitting at a table arguing about rule books and subsections 31D and the, fucking gerrymandered galactic territories and whose jurisdiction is what. I am rock hard while that is going down, man. All of that fucking subtext, all of that like shit bureaucratic throwing of the
office
book.
Politics of it, like the power struggles.
I am so into that. That is the ultimate fight for me at this point in my life. And I'm just, oh God, you understand those scenes? I'm hanging off every single word while they're doing their little verbal jousting shit.
Spoken like a true former corpo.
But it's like that. But honestly, those scenes are actually just really well written scenes in terms of like the verbal jousting that's taking place and how invested you become in the stakes and the performances of the actors. It's so good. And I love it. So yeah, you haven't seen Andor, have you, Lucy? No, you don't give a shit about Star
For
Wars.
the people
Star
listening,
Wars-
she
I
just
would
likes
say
Star
this
Wars.
though. No,
done.
I would say this though. This is a really fantastic entry point if you don't give a shit about Star Wars. I actually think this is a great entry point. Well, no, because there's not really.
You got to give a little bit of shit
this.
about Star
Ralph,
Wars.
So-
Ralph, you know what I'm currently watching, and it is the furthest thing it could possibly be from Star Wars. I'm
Correct.
watching Spyro the Dragon challenge runs on YouTube. Okay,
It's bleak out there right now. It's bleak.
no. There's a
That's
guy who
unhinged.
can complete the games without gliding.
I don't understand how that works in
How?
Spyro.
Okay, let me
That
tell you
sounds
about
like a lie.
proxies. And I'm not really gonna, but I could.
Anyway, that's my show and tell. And/or me 3 years late to the party. And/or is good, FYI. So there you go.
Okay.
How about that?
Lucy, what about? So tell us more about Spyro speedruns.
Well, that wasn't going to be my actual show and tell, but it is really
Okay.
good, and I will link to it in the newsletter because the person who runs this YouTube channel also did Can I Beat Every Dark Souls boss in alphabetical order, which I thought was fun. Anyway,
That's cool.
Impressive.
I went to Comic-Con last weekend, and I saw Lisa live, which I believe her name is, like Lisa is an acronym that stands for Live is Always Smile or Life is Always Smile. She does a lot of anime themes. I think she's done one for like My Hero Academia. I feel like she maybe have done Demon Slayer. I don't know her from that. Crunchyroll did a thing and they were like, hey, do you want to come and see Lisa live? And I was like, it's the Friday. I'm going to be tired. It was awesome. She was an absolute powerhouse. Incredible vocals live. She was like waving her arms. So like, good Lord, the arms on her. I was like, she was like, everything was like waving and punching the air and jumping around. And she had some amazing crowd work. And like I said, her voice was absolutely beautiful. And it was a great time. It was a great concert. And the energy was just really, really fun and really good. And so that was probably one of my highlights from Comic-Con.
Interesting.
Mine is Deadpool and Wolverine.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a good time. It did not change my world. Even as a comic book fan, it did not like it was an entertaining good time at the movies. It was a good
Yes.
popcorn movie. It didn't, for me, move the MCU needle or like I can't wait to see what's next. And it didn't have enough heart to really stick with me forever.
I agree.
But I just had a nice, entertaining romp.
That
with
I
it.
think is the problem with the multiverse. Because you actually can't care about the stakes when it comes to that, when multiverse
Yeah.
now, because every character just becomes an avatar at that point.
Yeah.
They're no longer a person, they're an avatar. And they can be swapped in. Like, what if Robert Downey Jr. is actually dead? You know what I mean? Like, it just, you don't really, like, oh, wow, Hugh Jackman has an arc in this film. But it's like, it's not actually the Hugh Jackman we watched. It's just a whole other Hugh Jackman. It's a whole other Wolverine going on his own arc.
Well,
you know?
also,
So-
like, it would have been cool. I thought this could have been like the point because, like, we thought like, oh, after Spider-Man No Way Home, everything's gonna change because the multiverse. That didn't really happen. Then Doctor Strange, oh, he opens the multiverse. That didn't really happen. This one could have been the one where they really restart things or do a good, because it could have been like Deadpool ruins everything, and that would have been, But whatever. I think it just as a fun little celebration of some movies and some comic books, I had a nice time. I laughed. It's going very viral now, but like the Deadpool dancing to NSYNC Bye Bye Bye.
Oh, is
Just
that why?
always will make
It's
me chuckle.
trending?
Like it's like they fuck.
that was a great scene.
It's
That's
so
the best scene in
good.
the movie.
And so the behind the scenes of that is like that's not Ryan Reynolds. They got like a professional dancer to do that. And it makes it so much funnier because he's going so hard at that like iconic dance that I will never not just like laugh at that.
Yeah, that was for me, that was the high point of the movie, and also the Liefeld feet only shoe shop.
For me it was Age of Apocalypse Wolverine. I was like, fuck yeah, let's go.
Which one was that?
Age of Apocalypse is
the crucifixion.
Yeah.
shop.
That cover was from Uncanny, I think, right?
I don't have that one. I don't know actually. I'm not
such
sure.
a mess. X-Men.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
also, entertaining.
I agree. I liked it overall. I just felt it was like just too much Deadpool. Just like shave off 25% of the gags.
Was it too much
or
Deadpool
like
or was it too much Ryan Reynolds?
Well, I think they're the same in terms of how I talk about it,
Yeah.
right? But it's like if you'd have just, because there's just so much setup for each joke and then so much reporting back after the joke lands just to make sure you got it and just to add a bit of icing onto it. And it didn't need that. It just, if you just shave like 25% of that off, I think you would have had a really great movie. But I just found it a bit much. And I like Deadpool 1 and 2, by the way. Like, I like that vibe. But because there was no plot in this movie, it was just relentless cameos and stuff and musical montages or whatever. I feel like that was a bit exhausting at times, you know. So.
Oh, also another wasted villain because Cassandra Nova is really cool, conceptually, and she's just another one-off.
Who played it?
Yeah, she crushed it, by the way. The actress, whoever played it, my God, she totally crushed that role.
She played Princess Diana in The Crown.
Oh,
that's all I know her from.
Yeah.
Oh, her, right, sure. No, but she did a fantastic job, truly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Emma Corrin.
Show and tell.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. Shout out to Wolverine. I like that guy. Just in general.
I have always believed that Hugh Jackman is a perfectly fine Wolverine, but the truly best Wolverine is still out there waiting for us. He's not for me. He's not my guy, 100%. And I'm looking forward to the day where they recast a Wolverine and someone who really like properly Wolverine.
Well, people were saying that like Taron Egerton could be a good Wolverine. Like there was rumors that that's what he was bulking up for. But like honestly, the guy from The Bear.
That would be kind of sick.
Interesting.
I can see that on many levels.
I need a height accurate Wolverine. I need a referable,
he's actually very height accurate and rage accurate as well, because the Bear is basically one big audition for Wolverine. So I can see it, but I don't know, man. I don't know. But look, I think I heard a rumor. I think my brother told me this, that like maybe Wolverine, like, you know, Hugh Jackman will be in the Avengers movie.
Yeah.
That I'm not a fan of that.
No offense. He's like, you know, coming up to old man Logan at that point.
He is. I just dusting off these old people, and like, age. It's not about the age, by the way. I don't really care, but it's really just like the fact that we've seen so much of them over so long. I really want some new faces doing the rounds. You know what I mean? And
I don't want them to squander the opportunity of like shedding that baggage and creating a great new X-Men that isn't just held back by the old, like, oh, Xavier, the mansion, the this, the that. There's so much more to X-Men.
Yes.
And we haven't seen, or, you know, general audiences haven't really seen that. So that's, totally also, no, I don't want to get too deep into it. So yeah. Lucy, you have something worth shouting out.
So our pals over at VGC, we've had Andy Robinson on before. They launched their Patreon. I know we said we'd get Jordan on at some point soon, but then obviously this week got very busy. But I did want to shout out that their Patreon launched, and I know for definitely me, actually I think I can speak for all of us, where we say that VGC is a website that we all visit every day.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And so
100%.
Yeah, if you want to support games journalism like that, then go over to their Patreon. I will.
Is that an official Friends Per Second endorsement? Is that a real thing we could do? Put a seal of approval on that?
We should do that.
We should do that. I'll make one in Photoshop and put it in the newsletter.
Yeah, there we go. Good job, boys. Independent media, good.
Yeah. I've got to make sure that Jordan is kept in energy drinks so he can keep doing his reviews of Rockstar energy drinks on Twitter.
Nice.
With that brings us to the end of this gargantuan episode. We're really proud of this one, so thank you if you stuck around. This was an absolute blast. Again, just a quick shout out, Gamescom, Germany, Cologne. We're going to be there. We would love to see you guys there. We're doing a live version of our show with whatever that may bring. That's going to be from 4 to 6 p.m. on Thursday, August 22nd. It's going to be in Hall 11.2. 11.2 as part of the public show.
If you're at Gamescom, you'll know where it is. It's one of the, I think it's one of the big halls.
Oh boy.
Shit.
Okay.
Please.
Well, we're looking forward to hopefully seeing some of you guys there. But yeah, other than that, you can also check out, of course, our Substack, friendspersecond.substack.com. If you want to see anything we referenced or any games or anything like that, go check that out. Go sign up for that. What do you do to a Substack? Do you sign up? What's the phrase?
You
click
sign up,
subscribe.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
good.
free.
Thank you. Okay.
So,
Well, yeah. Other than that, I'm at Jake Baldino. That's at SkillUp. That's at Lucy James. Lucy James?
Game.
Do I not know
Lucy
your...
James Games.
Lucy James.
No, Lucy James Games.
Lucy James.
Please,
Haynes,
my
of course,
brand.
duh.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I just forgot who you are for a second. That's who we are. We're Friends Per Second. We're here every other week. Thank you very much for listening. Tie your shoes and go to bed.